Oh,
I fucked up. Are we live?
It's always the guy in the lipstick.
We're live. All right. So the intro, the intro didn't work.
hi guys.
How's it going?
I don't know.
All right, we start off with a bang, coming back with our show, and
Yeah.
it didn't have an intro, it didn't have anything. So,
It didn't work.
my god,
Oh wait, here we go. All right.
Oh.
We're
gonna get the intro now.
rewind. And we're back with Ozzy Ahsen. What's up, Ozzy? How are you?
How you doing, Mark? Hey, Dave. Good to
Hey.
see you.
Yeah. So
Looking forward to it.
Sorry, we started without the thing. I clicked it, but it didn't go for some reason. Ozzy is from Three Monkey Solderless, formerly Three Monkey Amps, and Blockhead, I believe.
Yeah,
as well.
Blockhead back in the 90s and early 2000s. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually just saw one for sale on Reverb.
Yeah, they come up every once in a while. I made a few hundred of them, so they'll be around.
And what are they based on? I think it said it was 50 watts.
Yeah, well, there were a few, right? So I don't know. Should I go into all that, like the beginnings of all that?
You can go way back and start at the beginning
back?
when you were 2 years old.
When I was 2 years old. Well, it all started when I was taking apart radios when I was literally like 3, right? Just taking stuff apart. Wired my house up with like homemade intercoms when I was about like 8 or 9.
Oh wow!
Just always messing with their electronics. Built a little radio that I could listen to airplanes flying over. So I grew up basically in the Bronx, and it was a flight path to LaGuardia and JFK, and I used to like to listen to the aircraft come in and what they were saying and stuff like that. But anyway, so Blockhead was really trying to make amplifiers as close as I could to the original rare Plexis and pre-Plexis like JTM 45s, offsets, and then amplifiers that really didn't have a whole lot of exposure or knowledge of in the States, like the little 18-watt combos, the Capri, all these little bizarre amps. And it was before the internet. So it was like, where do you learn about this? So you had to go and like fly around and like buy amps and sell amps and look for amps and
Inspect circuits.
I mean, I was lucky my sister lived in England at the time, so I used to go and see her. And actually I found a really old amp at a market in Camden. And that was like, became the basis for the 63 split front that we made back then, just copying those. So they were 18 watters. We did the 212, the 110, the 210, the 112, the JTM 45s, which were either the 63, 62 white panels, the offsets, and then like 65, JTM 45s. Did the transition amp where they were like Black Flag 50s, solid state rectified EL34 like jams.
And are these all hand wired?
Yeah, it was crazy. So I didn't know if Mojo Tone was around then or any of this stuff. So I had to learn how to weld.
Not really.
I had to learn how to build cabinets. I had to learn all that. So I bought a big sheet metal brake and aluminum, and I'm like bending metal and trying to weld it. And at first it's like I'm just burning holes through the aluminum and getting the welder stuck everywhere. And eventually I got where I could do it. Wow. And I was making the chassis from scratch, making the cabinets, buying the birch in Connecticut and driving it in my Toyota to my shop and, finger joining the cabinets together and, making the circuit cards. I was buying phenolic board from distributors and cutting it up and drilling it. And so there was
we didn't have all that shit now like we do now. It's now you want to buy a board, you can buy a Plexi turret board or something, and right? Whatever, easy, no problem.
Yeah, that's
easy.
You can buy a chassis,
but I remember that era, and yes, you had to go buy the phenolic, and you had to make your own because it didn't exist.
And what year are we talking? Like early 90s?
Yeah, I mean, the amplifier builds probably go back to the 80s for me. Just like personal stuff, and then like messing around with my old amps. Like that little 50 watter over there I've had since I was like a teenager. And that was, that's been a special amp for me. And I actually never made a copy of that one. It was always like, well, it's a metal front. Who cares? No one likes that crap. It just does no Plexi. It doesn't get any love. Right. But yeah. Yeah, it was a different era. It was a different era for sure.
What about the offset that you got?
Okay. The offsets are based upon an actual offset that we had that was from England as well. And those are blockheads back there.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, they were really strange amps. You found a lot of variation in those really early offsets. There was, maybe that's an understatement, right?
Well, it's like, what parts do we have today?
Seriously. Yeah.
Look, throw those in. That'll work. Right. I've seen some of the most bizarre shit. Like no 100K resistors. So they put 82K resistors across the entire plate resistors of the board.
Those will work, right?
It'll work.
Turns it on and makes sound.
A little higher voltage, but it'll work.
Absolutely.
I've seen, I saw one Marshall that they put 0.1 coupling caps across the entire board. It'll work.
What year was that amp? What year was it? Do you know? Do you remember?
That was that was like an early metal panel amp.
Oh, okay.
Like it was a super bass amp originally, so they didn't have O22s, so they just put 0.1s across the whole thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a super bass now.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of bass for that one.
Yeah,
I fixed that.
Yeah, you got to do that. You got to do that.
I've seen miswires, all sorts of miswires, where it was like, hey, they skipped that whole filter stage, and one of the wires is tying, like the cathode follower wire is tying to the I don't remember exactly, tying to the phase inverter one instead of having its own filter, and that whole filter is just not being used. It's there, but it's not being used.
It's just, they're humans, right? So they're going to make mistakes, like you were saying. With hand wiring, mistakes will be made.
I have seen unsoldered solder joints from 1960 something. Wow. Where it's somehow hung on all these years. At least, it was kind of bent around the part, so it would
right
contact, sort of.
Yeah, that was British military wiring, right?
Oh, yes.
They would do a 270-degree bend for that purpose in case they should miss with the solder. It might still work.
Yes, or they were just a little drunk from the pub after they went there for lunch.
I'm sure that might have happened later in the days. I heard they used to use a lot of the ladies that built the radios during World War II, right? In Bletchley, where there was all that kind of like, code breaking and secret stuff going on, that they were building, spy radios or just general, equipment for the military. And when the war was over, they still had those, that skill. So
yeah, sure.
Put them to work, right? That's probably another reason why, a lot of things aren't done anymore. The skill just isn't there. How many people do you think that are under the age of 20 that are grew up using their hands the way that maybe we did?
No one, right? It's rare.
No, it's like it's my son. Hey, can you give me that Phillips screwdriver? Which one's that?
What's a Phillips? Yeah. Well, at least he'll learn.
Or the person who asked me wants to make him a video tutorial on how to change his fuse. I'm like, I didn't even know what to say.
You don't know.
I was just sitting there at my desk going,
what do I do?
Wow.
Well, I know people who they bring their guitar to a tech to get their strings changed. Like,
well, God forbid if you threw a Floyd Rose in there.
Oh my, yeah. Well, yes. Yeah, that would
not gonna happen.
Forget that.
Holy cow.
The worst thing, or the funniest thing that ever happened to me in that regard, is I sold an amp to a guy who will remain unnamed. Went down to his place in Texas, And he calls me up and he's like, the amp's not working. And I was like, oh no. It's like, listen, I'm really sorry. It hasn't happened before. I'm sorry that you had to be the guy that it happened to, but we'll work this out. So let's see what's going on. I was like, what is it doing? And it's like, well, when I turn it on, I don't hear anything. I was like, is the light on? Is the indicator light on? He's like, yeah, that's on. I was like, and it's plugged into the speaker cabinet. Absolutely. It's plugged into the speaker cabinet. Put your ear up to the speaker. I mean, can you hear anything? Just like a hiss, a pop? Is it making any noise? And he's like, no, I don't hear anything. And I was like, all right, so go around to the back of the amp and see if you can look inside and tell me what color the tubes are. And he goes, what color? Like if they're glowing. He goes, hold on a second. I got to get the tubes. They're in the closet.
Oh man.
So he took them out of the package and told me they weren't glowing. So I was okay. I think we have the problem. I take the tubes out before I ship them, so that way
they don't break, right?
They don't.
Yeah.
Well, now I ship them with the tubes because I think it's way safer.
Yeah, it's way safer.
Yep.
Yeah. I always like, if I pack an amp, sometimes I always ship it with the tubes in it, because I've had people. I have 20-watt amps where, all the sockets are the same and it's not labeled exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And, EL84s, and they put the EL84s in V1 and V2 slot. And then the other thing, why you put the EL34s near the input of the amp is baffling to my brain.
But not to them.
Not to them. No. And of course, when that happens, it blows something up in the amp. So it's this relatively easy fix, but it was DC referenced heaters, and when you put the EL84s in it, it blows the cap in the DC referenced heaters. Just get a little juice all over the board.
I mean, that's not something you want to have, right? No matter what, even if it's an easy fix, having something come back is like the number one thing that should never happen, right? You just want things to stay out there and, behave. But
absolutely,
there's always the delinquent children that you produce, right?
I have to admit, being one of those people who did a very, very dumb thing with when I received one of my EL, I think it was one of the EVH amps I got, and I remember writing what was his name? You know what I'm talking about, right? Howard Kaplan. Yeah, I wrote Howard, and I'm like, Howard, because I happen to know him on Facebook. I don't think he's really on Facebook anymore or online.
Right.
But I wrote him at the time, and I said, hey, Howard, the amps, I'm not getting any sound out of the amp at all. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And oh no, I think it was my effects. I said,
the effects don't work. The effects
are not working. I go, the effects are not working. I can't get. I have everything plugged in. I don't know what's going on in the effects loop. He goes, do you have the effects button, pressed on the footboard? Because there's an effects loop.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm such a fucking idiot.
Hey, that's I don't think that's really that bad at all. Because
it was like
remote effects loops do you have? Not every amp is that way.
True. But I still just it just threw me. I was like, oh my God.
Sorry for wasting your time.
Yeah, that's basically what I wrote him. I said, oh my God, I'm an idiot. Sorry. So
that's all good. That's all good.
We had a Robert Bogdan says, Ozzy, I want to tell you the Blockhead Firstborn I have is an amazing amp, the best Marshall I have ever played, or the best Marshall I have ever played, and I played a lot of them. Well done.
Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. The Firstborn is the 212 18 water. Had two Alnico blues in it. So Robert, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
And why would you go with the Alnico blue on that rather than say like a greenback or something? I'm just curious.
Well, the example that we had the old silver bells in it. So we just, used the modern equivalent at the time. The blues were just coming out. I think, no, they'd been out a little bit, but it was, about building the exact amp that we would find. So like, for instance, the Firstborn came from Minnesota, from Solid Body Guitar, right? So we flew out to Minnesota. And they closed down the store for an entire like 3 days. And we just stayed in there and took everything apart. Right. So Kenny, who ran the place over there, was like, yeah, you have run of the place, anything you want to look at. So they had, you know, Style 1 blues breakers, offsets, every model JTM, Plexis, super basses, you know, the white panel, super 100s, all kinds of rare stuff. And I was like, what's your favorite amp in here? And he goes, this one right here. And on the price tag, it said Firstborn Son. So that's what, because they wouldn't sell it. It was like, you know, the draw for the store that everybody loved this amp. So I was like, what if I produce one? Can I take this thing, you know, apart and, you know, see what's going on with it and make some? He's like, as long as we can sell them ourselves and no one else can, you know, then that's cool with me. So I was like, yeah. So blueprinted that Firstborn, which had the silver bells in it. And we just started selling them through Solid Body Guitar out in Minnesota. And yeah, that was it. That one did pretty well. Like some went to like, like Brent Paschke from Pharrell's band, Billy Gibbons. There was like a whole bunch of people. And it was like, you know, at that point.
Were you building the cab too?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I was building everything. Telexium. I mean, it was, you know, it was me building it, welding the chassis, punching them, drilling them. I'm not punching. I didn't have a punch. I always used the Unibit. So it was, you know,
pain in the ass.
Yeah, but I loved it. I really did. You know, I just enjoy making things. You know,
I mean, I'm just curious. But when you make a cab, like you know, like a 4x12, or you make like or you know, like a combo, 212 or 210 combo or something like that. When you're putting that together, is that where they have like the weave joint going together? And
yeah, they use like a finger joint, you know, so you build like a little, a jig. So there was like a couple of ways that you could do it. You could do it with a router, and they sell like a jig that you can bolt plywood into, and then run the router through these little guides that would cut the fingers. But later I built a sled for a table saw that would do it. And it was a little bit quicker. And it was really weird when I moved down here, to work with Greg, my partner at Three Monkeys, who was Brad's tech. And we were like, let's build some 412 cabinets, you know, just to start off. So we just like built another jig really quickly over a weekend to do finger jointing. And we built like, I think it was a dozen 412 cabinets. And we called them 8-ball cabinets. And we sawed 8 balls in half and shoved, you know, pins in them and mounted them on the cabinets. And then those went, and Brad used a few of them. And it was kind of like, it was a fun thing to do. But yeah, finger jointing is what you got to do, or it's going to break, you know? Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like a whole other skill, you know, to building an amp, you know, like, that's amazing. Yeah.
I love I build guitars. I build like, you know, Les Paul copies, Flying V's, Explorers.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Should I get one?
Sure.
One? Yeah. Hang on.
I can see a Les Paul copy. I'd love to see it.
Yeah. I'll show you the copy of Joe Perry's.
Wow. That's killer. That's killer. We do have a super chat.
Two.
Two of them, yeah. But one of them doesn't have a message. Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah, so this one is a copy of Joe Perry's. It has the same. I don't know if I'm going to smash it here. Has the same serial number as Joe's. Obviously, the little ring rash from his pinky.
Right. Nice.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's all checked up.
Good job.
Yeah. I just anything that I like, I want to make. So if it's a car or a guitar or an amp, paintings, whatever it is, I'm going to make it, and I'm going to figure out how to do it, you know? So
that's killer.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So did you just build them? Well, you build them for some other people, or did you mainly just build them for yourself?
No, that would be illegal.
Yes, okay, you were 100% right.
Yeah. So what's
At least
funny
that one.
is, yeah. So we're doing like an amp show in Nashville. Like, I don't know, it was like 10 years ago. So, we knew like the guys from Gibson, like Steve Christmas is down there, a few other people. And so we went to the factory and we hung out there a little bit. And then they all came back to our place to see the amps. And I built an SG too. It was like a 63 with the Lyra vibrato tailpiece on it. And that was sitting there. And I think this guitar was there and a few of them. And the guys from Gibson, like one of the guys that was in the finishing room of the custom shop, picked it up and he's playing it. And then he's looking at it. And then he's like, he looks at me and goes, "What is this?" I was like, I made it. And he was like, "You're not selling these, right?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "That's cool." So,
Yeah,
we got
yeah.
caught.
Well, that's and knowing Gibson, out of all the companies, that you definitely don't want to be doing that.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Although they
It'd be
just
really cool for sure.
Yeah.
But you definitely don't want to, you don't want to piss them off too
Absolutely.
much, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Good bunch of people. Good bunch
Yep.
of people.
Yeah. What was I going to say? They just lost their lawsuit.
So what was it for the volute or was it for the cutaway?
With the bodies for Dean for the V and the Explorer body.
Oh wow!
So I think it was.
Well, they lost they won the first one, then they lost the appeal.
Okay.
And then now
It goes back to another case again.
To another, yeah. So now
they're going to retry it. But basically, I think it was deemed that the higher court said that that the bodies are not copyrightable or trademarked or whatever it is.
Interesting.
So, yeah, interesting as well. Jim A, 5150. What's going on? Dave and Mark, hope you're doing well. Welcome, Azie.
Hey, thanks.
Welcome. Carrie Kruger, man, thank you. I don't see your question though. This always happens. So if I find it, I'll let you know, but I don't see it, Carrie. If you find it, Dave, let me know.
Oh, I haven't looked.
I
had like a crazy week.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Oh, here it is. Hello, Dave from Detroit. Went and seen Marty this weekend. My grandson and I had a wonderful time. Oh, Marty at Motor City?
Yep.
Cool. Very cool. Very nice.
That's awesome.
Busy work week, Dave?
Yeah, I was getting stuff ready for the Sweetwater Gearfest thing I'm going to do.
Oh, you're going to do that?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Are they finally doing it live again?
They are doing one people day or one public day. Yeah. Saturday.
That was fun, man.
But it's not going to be outside like that. It's going to be all inside. So it's not as big as it was, but
so that's
that's better.
But inside's much better.
Yeah, I was going to say you don't have to worry about the storm and
you don't have to worry about the storms coming and or the excessive heat or the humidity or anything. So yay, air conditioning.
Still stressful though. I was watching that the video you did with Mike Soldano, right, where you're talking about NAMM, and I definitely felt for.
Oh yeah, so for the last couple of days, I'm like,
how you're never prepared. You know it's coming, but you just don't get.
No,
right?
I'm pretty self-contained, but I'm also a little bit of a control freak. So, because I always exhibit amps with like an amp switcher where you can easily toggle between things. Okay, I got to get that put together. I got to get all the cables I need put together in a bag. I got to get all this stuff put together. I need that sample pedal board. Oh, I got to add this new pedal that we have on it. Okay, I got to do that. And, and by the time you're done, you're just like, so I finished all that. It's stacked over behind me in a pile. It's going to leave. I can't really.
Yeah, I see it right there.
Not all my amps, but like some of the
pedal boards and stuff.
Switching stuff and stuff that comes from my personal shop, not the factory.
So when you're switching the amps with your switcher, what are you doing for like the load on the amplifiers themselves? Are you just disconnecting and leaving them?
No, I think
it's a full amp switcher, so it takes the whole thing in and out. So it depends on which amp switcher. Some of them shunt the speaker, shunt to ground.
Yeah.
the speaker
Bradshaw
cable, which
used
is
to shunt, right?
yeah, like a
Yeah.
Bradshaw one.
Yep.
Some put a small load
Okay.
in there, but it's not designed to take take signal, but it's
Yeah.
designed to just put a
Yeah. You
small
mute
load on it.
the input. You don't
Yeah.
really have to worry
Yeah.
about the output, right?
So on the one I'm using is a KHE,
Okay.
which is quite good, and there's nothing like having an amp switcher to really see if you're full of shit or not. Because when you switch in real time, it tells all.
It can for sure. So
it tells all, kind of. It's because you can convince yourself this one sounds different than this one, and then you put it on the switcher and you're like, oh, maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, it's bias creeps in if you're not doing it on the switcher. So
yeah, that's whenever I A/B anything for anyone, I always also have them not look.
Okay.
Because if they look at something, if they're say they're A/Bing a Friedman to a Marshall or something,
right?
If they look and they're biased towards a Marshall, they'll always pick the Marshall.
I agree.
If they're blindfolded, I find that half the time they guess wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And if they guess more than a few times wrong, then
it is a strange phenomenon, right? I mean, that was one of the things that we were brainstorming about how consumers choose things, right? During the Three Monkeys days. And we had met with like marketing people that are really into this sort of thing. And people, they hear with their eyes, they taste with their eyes, there's all that kind of like, crossbleed between the senses, right? I don't know if you could go so far as to call it being like synesthesia, but it's definitely, there's cross pollination there. So, anything you expect to hear is going to be, influencing there.
right.
Which like is so huge in the Eddie thing, right? Getting the Eddie sound.
Right.
Because you're really hearing what you know of Eddie while you're listening to things that you're trying to make to sound like Eddie or judge if it sounds like there. So it's trying to separate the internal conversation of music, right? The internal sound that's in your head from the actual sound you're listening to from another source. And the two, it's very difficult to do. So, when you're chasing sounds, it's hard to know where you are.
And also going down that rabbit hole, it's like, you're listening to a recorded
that's exactly what I was going to say, which is already
the amp.
Yes.
Just the plate reverb alone, or plate reverb and or echo chamber or whatever was used on whichever recording alone changes the whole sound of the amp.
Absolutely. I mean, you're really listening to the microphone.
You're listening to the console, you're listening to the microphone, you're listening to how maybe it was EQ'd in the mix.
Yeah,
you're listening to
the record.
Yeah, you're listening to all that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an almost, impossible sort of.
It's not almost, it is impossible.
Yeah.
Right?
To really say that's it. Also, people's hands. So if you really can't play the riffs like him, or you can't attack the guitar in the same way,
right,
you're not going to get the same response. I've seen it time and time again with people, come in that are decent guitar players, but they maybe, I might say they have concrete hands.
Okay.
Just everything that they plug into sounds like there's no gain, there's no sustain, there's no nothing. They can play, but it's a weird.
There is something there, right? Like I think there's two sides to that argument. And I'll give you one story that entirely supports, in my mind, what you were just saying.
Yeah.
So at another show, I got a sock monkey, right? And that's AC30, right? Like with you in Soldano saying everything is this, but with a gain stage in front of it, right? Every amp made today is like this, but with the gain stage. So this Sock Monkey was like a hot rod at AC30. Well, anyway, Jimmy Hazel wanted an amp, and he was using, what was he using? Like a 5-stage gain stage amp, like a what was the name of that company again? I don't know, but it was Mesa Boogie Heart. So he's like, let me try this Sock Monkey. I'm like, dude, it's like made for like classic rock, maybe even country. It's gonna sound like Brian May. What are you doing with this? So he just, let me just see it. So he plugs into it, puts his guitar and starts playing it, and I swear to God, it sounded like a triple rectifier. It was unreal. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is a magic trick. I was like, how are you doing this? And Jimmy was like, it's me, man. It's me. And I was like, that was a lesson right there and then for me, that it was, a total freak show, that Jimmy was able to make that amp sound like a rectifier.
I think
another again,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the part that also gets me is, let me think of a good song. Spirit in the Sky. Do you think it matters what your hands are like to get the tone from the beginning of Spirit in the Sky, or whether it's a Alnico 5 or an Alnico 2 magnet that's produced in the guitar that was doing that sound? Or
no, why not?
So some are so affected, right, that they're a product of some process more than a product of the person. And the Van Halen sound to me has both of those factors in there.
Yeah, there's definitely, and that's the tough part. Oh, the first album.
Yeah.
It's funny because people always dissect the albums and the tone that he got on the albums, but there are live recordings.
Sure.
Of course, people could say, "Oh, well, is that really how they sounded from the night of the band?" But it's as close as you're going to get. And of course, live they didn't. His guitar didn't sound as like massive as it does on the album, right? But it still sounds amazing.
Yeah, it did. I mean, something changed, right? Because I think when was it Brian Kehoe, when he was releasing those tracks of what was it, of Eruption, and they had the overhead mics, and you could hear at the very end where he goes into "You Really Got Me," right? And you can hear that A chord and how that A chord is distorting. And you listen to that and you're like, that was the first time I was like, oh my God, Eddie's amp is broken. Probably something's wrong with this. That's not the way a Marshall sounds. It sounds splatty, overly distorted. It sounds almost like it has a cathodiene phase inverter that's not quite working right. It doesn't sound like a long tail pair, So I'm like, was it an orange? Is he using some like crapped out orange amp, or is his output transformer blown up? What is it that's causing that raspy kind of sound that's really over the top in terms of its splatty distortion? But you don't hear that in the bootlegs, like especially if there's a bootleg that people turned me on to that was recorded, not more than a couple of months after they did the album, and the guitar sound is absolutely over the top, just amazing, right?
Yeah.
Or like the English bootlegs, like from Hammersmith.
Yes,
and that amplifier just sounds perfect, right? It sounds like it's working right. It's definitely got more Plexi, more going on than a Plexi should, in my opinion. But it sounds like they're working right. But that amp that was played in that room at that time, in that Eruption, that amplifier was either set up crazy or was broken or wasn't a Marshall. So, I mean, I never heard a Marshall that was working right.
But it was working for Eruption, though.
Yeah. I mean, after Don went through there and, did his thing to it and polished it, it created something that was absolutely amazing to my ears.
This will get into the theories.
Okay.
And this is your whole channel.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's my
this gets into the theories. So the theories of slaving the amp with the load resistor. Yes, we all know it's the 20 ohm mismatched impedance, blah blah blah, into another Marshall.
Right.
Which would explain the broken sound, actually, if you're asking me, because I have
One way.
never been able to really make that sound great.
It does
Not
sound
great. Maybe okay.
Like yeah.
And you know, if you think if he was going into another Marshall, well, it depends on what he was actually going into. But if you think he was going into another Marshall, it's like, well, what input? Which channel? If it was a standard Marshall, seemingly the bright input with the bright cap on really doesn't work.
Yeah,
You know? As you know, as you've gone down this path.
Sure.
And I do actually believe, because he said in print that he used a combination of 2 amps.
Yes.
You know, this whole thing I'm going to say right now. The combination of 2 amps. One has, I mean, he didn't say it correctly. One has less power, and there's this stick of dynamite hooked up to the fuse holder, is what he said.
Yeah.
In the back of the amp.
Right.
What that is a load resistor hooked up to the top amp going into the bottom amp.
It would make sense.
That's what would make sense from what was said.
Sure.
Hence, but I really only think that was done, that kind of setup was done on the first record.
It's
very
possible.
Hypothetically. Yep. Because he said he said I did a lot of work with Ed. So he said he hated that sound.
Yeah, I remember
he didn't like the first record sound.
Right.
He said it was too bright, too much, too, you know, just like he didn't like it.
Weird development, right?
I don't know. You know, I think that's very possible, that because I also know I was also when I first moved to California in 1988, I got an amp modded by Jose, and I, you know, saw the little amp he was working on at his shop that was the size of an SVT and stuff, and that was interesting. And
it was that the golden amp, the one
yeah,
that both Sammy and Ed could play through at the same time or something like that.
I you know what, I don't know what it is, but maybe we'll talk about that not here.
Okay. No worries.
Wow, I never even heard of that.
Oh yeah, no. there was an amp. Now, I don't know. There was an amp, there was a control little panel, and that had a little trap door, and it said hey, this is Ed's sound. No, it's literally a trap door.
I know. I'm just laughing.
This is Ed's sound, and then there's another channel. I really didn't get a lot out of him. This was like at his this was at his shop. You know, he's just showing me this in passing, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid at the time. It's like, hey, I'm at Jose's shop. Cool. There's a striped guitar on the wall, you know. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, especially in 88. Right?
Totally jealous. I had to hang out at Harry Kolb's shop.
Yeah. Yeah, he wasn't quite as good.
He had a couple of Eddie stories, but they weren't, you know.
Now, what was Jose cool?
Oh, yeah, he was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Yes, he was awesome.
Now, did he like the music? You know, like, did he? Or
I don't know if he liked the music. He didn't play guitar.
Amazing.
He literally, how he tuned amps was the guitar was hanging on the wall, right? And he'd pull the volume knob open and hit it with his hand like this. And then he'd hear it through the amp.
And say, okay, that's good enough.
Well, no, that's how he would, know, make sure that
it sounded the way you wanted it.
Yeah. You know, but what I've known, because I've probably been in at least 100 Jose's over the years.
Wow. Okay.
At this point. Well, maybe less than that. Maybe it's 50. Okay.
But
a lot, right?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of different variations and stuff, but they're all basically the same. Relatively the same. Some have clipping diodes, some don't have clipping diodes, some, you know, but there a couple weird things that he played with, but they all kind of, there's a common ground between all of it. And essentially that was a tube stage in front of a stock Marshall with a master volume added. Now that's the basic, and with a way to blend the channels, pull both. And then sometimes later he did this master volume that was the dual pot with a push pull master, and it was either a pre-master with clipping diodes, or it was the post, but the clipping diodes still did something in the post mode. So
they were always in that loop. One was somewhere between, like you're saying, one of the volumes limited the actual cathode followers connection to the tone stack, and the second master I think came right off the treble control, like an ordinary pre-phase inverted master.
Yeah, you've done your thing with the Jose that you have or had or have.
Yeah, I still got it.
The funny thing about that amp that you have, because I saw that video.
Do you know it?
Huh?
Do you know it?
Well, the funny thing is when you were going through that amp, I'm going to say something.
Okay.
So the big filter caps.
Yeah.
That's in it. That amp was a Lee Jackson amp before.
You think that explains something? That explains.
It was a Lee Jackson amp positively before it was the Jose. And Jose didn't put in the big filter.
He never put those big caps in there.
No, never. That was the Lee Jackson. And or Paul Rivera, one of the two. So it could have been either.
I didn't think of Lee Jackson.
Yeah, Lee Jackson and Paul Rivera both did that mod with the big filter caps. And like massive, I don't know what they were, with
they're
330 or
like
something.
3300s.
Yeah, like in series with each other. You're massive.
Yeah.
Kind of sucks the life out of things sometimes.
Yeah, I don't agree with over filtering things.
Yeah, no, not at all. And but when I was watching your video, I go, that is left over. And I also think, didn't it have a 001 treble cap or something?
All right, so
something like that. I don't remember. Exactly.
All right, so it had in parallel, it had the normal 470, and then it had a 3300 puff in parallel with it, which is also off for Jose as well. Jose, didn't usually have that, right?
I think that was also a leftover thing from.
Now, do you think that it went from Jose to Lee Jackson, or the other way around?
No, the other way, because it had a tube missing, right? Didn't it have an extra hole or something?
It did, but it had a loop in it, right? So there was
But is there a missing hole there?
Yes.
That was sort of shoved between the cathode follower and the phase inverter?
Yes. So that would be where Lee would put it.
Well, Lee or Paul Rivera, because Paul Rivera's mod were the same. Lee worked for Paul Rivera.
This is really cool.
So that's where that stuff came from, because never in a million years, like the Lee Jackson amps and Paul Rivera amps actually wound up having this control, what did they call it, frequency or something,
the mid frequency.
Frequency control and
flicker switch.
It was a mid.
That was basically changing the treble cap.
Exactly.
From 250 picofarad, 470, and then up to 0047, I think, at the max.
Yeah.
And whenever I undo one of those mods and put one of mine in, if that has it, if it has that in it, I just leave that in, because it's actually kind of cool. It does some fun stuff for people. It's like, you want the right sound, then go here. But if you want some different things, go here.
Go right over there.
Why not?
Why not? It's there.
There's nothing. I've learned over the years that nothing is wrong. Depends on the person.
No.
Anything can work. It depends on the artist or the person. It's
absolutely,
and how they play and what music they're trying to make, and you have to really be open to that stuff, because if you're not, you're really shut down.
Shorting yourself. You're shorting yourself out.
Yeah,
I absolutely believe that. I mean, and everything in life is that way. Anything can work in a given situation.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're even in theories, right? Like I think that is like a thing with the Eddie thing, that it became dogmatic, and that, you know, there's certain factions and they have their rhetoric and their dogma. And if you stray from that dogma, you're now a heretic. And you're to be hunted down and beaten right into submission. And then you're going to have wars between the different factions with different religiosities, right? But if you don't consider anything to be possible and leave yourself open, you're kind of only cheating yourself, right? I don't think I know at all what he was doing, and I would consider anybody's opinion that it might have been this way or this way or this way to be absolutely as legitimate as any other opinion, right?
Well, there were some things about that actually I was going somewhere and I got sidetracked. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I was going somewhere. So Jose, and this is where I was going. Yeah, the Jose thing. So Jose often was a proponent of loading down an amp with a load resistor.
Yeah.
And then reamping it with something. I saw this later in the early 90s with Joe Holmes when he was playing with David Lee Roth. I saw, you know, I think he was using an old JBL power amp or something.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was a load resistor. You know, it was loading down the amp.
It, right?
And this was a thing for him that he liked to do.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's very possible that he probably introduced that concept with Ed. It's very possible. And now this is all hypothetical, you know, things, but
it is hypothetical. It makes sense. I mean, he had to find a way to control that amplifier to play in clubs. I mean, there's absolutely zero possibility, I believe, that any front of house guy at any one of these clubs would be like, you can do that. I don't mind.
Well, I don't know. I don't actually believe that, because during that time, no. And I even saw it in later years. During that time, I've seen people play those clubs like the Whiskey and stuff with a 100-watt Marshall on 10. In recent times, I saw that with Jakey Lee do that. So one of my amps.
Does that even work?
It works. They don't put much of him in the PA.
Okay. You just get,
but even still, it's
right
out. Loud. It's loud as fuck.
Very
but come on, you know, everyone's pussies these days. Give me a break. I mean, I've seen it time and time again over the years, people playing clubs. Now, the thing is, there's not much clubs anymore, and now it's like local Joe's Bar is where the stage is, right? And Joe's Bar, they don't necessarily want it that loud. There's not so much rock clubs anymore. You know what I mean?
No,
they actually just have a stage and stuff, like the Whiskey or something. You know, that's still a rock
there's few and far between now. I mean,
the
funny part too is you get like all the big acts now. They're playing the giant venues and they want their stage volume down below like 100 dB.
And
whisper quiet.
And so the soundmen argument with that. I can control your sound better. I'll give you a better sound. Have we ever actually heard them give us a better tone? No, never. In fact, it's always generally sucks. That's what I say these days. I mean, it just, to all the sound guys, I don't believe you, because you haven't proven that to be true.
Okay.
At least most.
I mean, they're a necessary. You have to admit they're a necessary evil in terms of being able to play a larger venue, right? Because you need to blend the balances between the bass, the drums, the vocals.
Yeah, but like,
keep it somewhat in there.
If people have great sounds, they can. So a very great sound guy who we've had on the show, Tom Abraham.
Okay.
He goes, whatever makes the artist feel comfortable on stage is fine with me.
That's usually
and he makes that work. And I've seen this time and time again. There's a club in Los Angeles, the Viper Room, and I remember an employee of mine that used to play there. He's like, I had my amp almost off, and they said it was too loud.
Yeah.
But then a big name artist goes in and does a show. Steve Stevens, he goes in and does like this guest show, and Sebastian Bach singing and this and that and all these people. And guess what? His amp was on 7, 100-watt amp on 7, and it was crushingly loud. And guess what? They just let him do that. And it was amazing sounding. So
yeah, there's some of that. I mean, if you go like with Aerosmith or whatever, there's a lot of politicking with like who's louder than who,
of course,
and who gets what mix, right? So as long as Steven is happy, then the band can proceed. But it doesn't matter. Anything else is going on. You know, Brad could be like totally lost. Joe could have his watch stuck in the guitar, but as long as Steven's happy, it's, you know, it's fine.
Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, the politics of the band can have a lot to say about what the sound is like as well.
That's true. Definitely. That's true.
Yeah.
We've got just to jump to a couple of super chats. Jay Stevens, thanks for the super chat. What's up, guys? A couple bucks to help fund the vice of your choice. Ooh.
Nice.
Hookers and blow.
I was gonna say 19 ain't gonna get you.
I'm drinking Pete Thorne's tequila.
There you go.
I gave Pete Thorne a bottle of tequila, and it was here, and so I'm drinking it. He knows.
Nice.
Nice. Oh, nice. Yeah, I was like, oh man.
Or I'm having a glass of it. I'm not drinking the whole thing.
Right.
If that's a different show.
Yeah, exactly. We've got Stan Mucha. What's up, Stan? Hey, Azie, please talk about your Marshmallow amp and its custom load and how you think EVH loaded his Plexi incorrectly for VH1. We talked about that. Love the Marshmallow amp.
I appreciate it. I mean, we did cover some of that. I just think it was a possibility that, all right, so if you take like the curve of a EL34, right? The load curve of it. And you're plotting across the load and the voltage, and you're seeing how it's going to be amplifying at different, points of operation. Now, as you start to lower the load down the amplifier, it asymptotically goes down to 0, but it never reaches 0, right? So I'm thinking to myself, well, there's a lot of opportunities to create a lack of headroom in the power supply, or the power section rather, of the amplifier by changing the load that's presented to the amplifier. And either side of the load curve sort of can give you similar results. So going up way too high or going way too low can yield similar, maybe not exactly, but similar effects. So I was theorizing that one of the reasons why his amplifier may have been distorting the way it was is that the tubes were pushed into a point of operation where they were conducting more like a diode than they were, the full, signal. So it would just cut everything off dead square very harshly, which would allow it to transient in between a very distorted sound and a fairly clean sound. So it would give that dynamic kind of strange sounds that his amplifier seemed to present. If you get something like like an SLO or a multi-gain stage amplifier, they tend to be able to clip or stay over the line of clipping longer as they're, building amplitude from stage to stage. So they tend to stay in a very sustained, smooth kind of period when they're at full gain, right? So they don't drop below that line really quickly to make it sound like that kind of like buzzy, electrically crappy sound. But if they're, the line is pretty low here and they can just move in and out of it at the peaks, you can get that raspy kind of sound. So I was like, maybe the load resistor is the reason why it was doing what it was doing. And that maybe, he didn't have it set up right. But Jose, I can't blame him for that. These are just theories, right? From
what I gather, it was a possibly, because we don't know this for a fact.
20 or whatever.
A 20-ish ohm load.
Okay.
With an 8 ohm tap.
Okay.
Even later, when Bob Bradshaw did his rig, he had a 16 ohm load and the 8 ohm tap on the amp. And I know that for a fact. I've seen the box that he had that so many amps hooked up to it, 8 or 6 amps or something hooked up to it, and it had a little rotary switch, and basically it was just 6 amps loaded. There were 6 load resistors across the inside of the amp, big 300 watters, and 16 ohm load resistors, and then a switch that switched, basically the into the line out of each one. So even then, Live Without a Net, sounded actually pretty cool too.
That was a great sound.
That was a great sound. And that essentially was a loaded down Marshall, this way into an H&H power amp with some effects.
Yes.
Some cool delays and this and that. A great sound also. So that had to come from somewhere, I believe.
Sure.
The thing is I've been entrenched in that camp forever, right? So, and I've looked at a ton of old amps that were used on tours, like that you see pictures of, and
right,
that the JMPs later, 4-input JMP, big logo amps, all those. The wood Marshall one that you see that's all wood, that's the Tolex stripped off. Been in that, worked on that.
Wow.
Been in all those amps. None of them are modded in any way at all, really. Maybe occasionally you would see one or two little tiny changes, but I would call it still stockish.
It's not. It's nothing that's going to make it do that, right?
No gain mods. No gain mods or anything at all. Ever. Never seen one ever.
You see, that's why.
Ever. And I literally went looking for this.
Right.
I'm like, there's got to be something in here somewhere. Nope.
So do you think it's the where he got some of that extra gain? And I've asked this question before, and it's speculation, but from those graphic EQs.
Well, okay. So here's the funny thing about those. So the funny thing about those graphics, theoretically, is they were there to really. They kind of did it ass backwards, but he went through all his stuff, maybe into the front of the amp, maybe. But maybe the Echoplex wasn't in front of the amp. Maybe it was after. Don't really know. Not for sure.
Those EQs were kind of close to those Echoplexes, weren't they?
And the EQs were close to the Echoplexes. Hypothetically, you could say that maybe there was an amp with a load into an EQ, into an Echoplex, into something.
Another amp. Yeah. It would help with that crappy sound, getting it a little less crappy. Right?
But I don't. But the other thing that throws me off is the bright input always on that. I don't see how that worked, unless he had it literally up so high that it didn't matter anymore.
That it didn't matter, and then it defeats the purpose in some ways.
And then it sort of defeats the purpose. But you're getting extra. You're putting basically a loaded down amp, which is a distortion box, let's say, into the front of a regular Marshall. But it would make sense maybe if he went into the low input on the bass side.
It sounds better.
I never saw that.
Yeah.
But then again, we don't have all the pictures.
You usually just see him plugged into two amplifiers vertically, right? To the same channel, two on the same.
So
which is another strange
this thing. I mean, later it was definitely a loaded down amp with a load resistor through delays into a power amp. For sure. That power amp start came in 1984. Also,
he was always moving towards where he ended up, without question. Right? So, I think that's the case. He was always moving towards where he ended up. This was not like a total change. It was a progression in my mind. Right?
And he always wanted more about more everything he did. He wanted more.
Can I turn this further?
Can I turn it further? No, this is an absolute thing. I remember putting a rig together for him, and there's a buffer on the board that had a gain trim in it. And Matt Bruck's like, don't tell him that it has a gain trim in it, because he's going to turn it all the way up. I'm like, Okay, I won't tell him. We got it.
Well, you would. Is he? I've worked with a couple of people that, for some reason, they think the harder you step on an effect pedal, the better it's going to sound. So they tend to break things pretty often. So I don't know if he was like that as well. It must have been a trip.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, yeah. It's
I kind of think it comes from his like love of fast cars too, and like tinkering with cars and motorcycles.
It's the same concept. Yeah,
yeah. It's like just hot rodding
for sure. That's the same idea.
Yeah,
it's evident in his personality, and I love the guy to death. From my perspective of not meeting him 2 or 3 times in my life for a couple of seconds here and there, which was how I wanted it to be. For sure, but it's everything I think in his life was, what if I just one more?
Yeah, this is true. This is absolutely 100% accurate.
Yeah.
I was also told, it's just like it's the same amp on every record. It was one amp.
The first six.
It makes
correct.
Makes sense. Makes sense to me too. I mean, I think Don, the recording technique, I think, has a lot to do with things, right? Why the things sound the way they do.
And VH1 probably could have been a slave situation.
Could have, yeah.
VH2 wasn't.
It definitely, VH2 sounds more what you would expect.
And that's my favorite.
Sound like.
But there's a picture in Sunset Sound that Lozauer did. You know the infamous picture where the beer cans are all on the floor.
Yeah.
And that one picture where he's got the 2 Marshalls on top of each other, it almost looked like he was slaving there. The picture
so much was said about
I'm not sure of the exact picture,
staged, right?
What's that?
I've heard some people say that was actually a staged photo in the sense that they were either loading
That's
out
true.
or loading in.
It was a staged photo with all the stuff all over the floor and everything, but not necessarily sure if the equipment was. But it's interesting.
It looked like, to record in the fashion that they had things set up there wouldn't be ideal for a recording studio, in my mind anyway.
The interesting thing is Rudy Laren had told me that it was 1 amp, 1 cab. If they wanted it louder, now I'm just quoting what he told me. If they wanted it more or louder, they would add another amp and another cab. And the same thing further, more and more in the early days. Now, that other amp or cab could have been a power amp, so to speak, which also makes sense with some of the amps that were around in the early days and the club days and stuff. It's like, hey, there's a Fender amp there, there's a Vox amp there, there's a Laney amp there, there's
some kind of weird Fender even or something like that.
And it didn't make a lot of sense, when he said he lost his amps in Pan Am flight, lost his amps or something, right?
Yeah.
There's only 1 amp there, Mark.
Yeah, you're right. There's only 1 amp.
1 amp on the floor, and it's got 2 speaker cables coming out of it. So where's the other speaker cable going is the question. Could have been 2 cabs.
All things we'll probably never. I mean, have you experienced this, Dave? I mean,
he didn't even know. I asked him some of these questions.
Right.
He didn't even remember.
This goes directly to that. Working with a lot of people, a lot of artists, a lot of techs, right? A lot of guys are on the road. I know a lot of guys on the road. The majority of them are not highly technical.
No, not at all.
And when they try to describe to you what they've got going on, they're usually way off from what the actual reality is. And when you go to an artist, it gets even worse. To have them explain their rig to you is like, you just don't even want to bother with it, because it's like, let me just look at it and I'll know. Instead of, I got, this thing out of, it has to do with the electronic ignition in a car and it's shoved in the, in the amplifier, right?
Yeah. That's the thing with the load resistor.
Yeah. So it's, to listen to it, it's like, I try to interpret it a little bit, but it's difficult to know. Did they know what they were looking at? Are they using a different vocabulary or a different lexicon than we're used to using? but makes sense to them. So it's lost in translation. So maybe, like you said, Rudy's like, if we wanted it louder, we just got another amplifier.
Yeah. That's what I was kind of hypothesizing, right?
Yeah. I mean, you've noticed probably too, if you daisy chain amps together, right? If you go with guitar into here and then out of here to another, you lose everything. Yeah. You're going to sound like, Kenny Chesney in half an hour, right?
Yeah. I mean, unless then again you have an EQ driving the front of it, and then it's pushing. That might be pushing into the front of all the amps.
Yeah, the EQ might be stuck with duct tape onto the front.
Yeah, with a little MXR 6-band.
Yeah,
which we saw, and those things are noisy as holy crap.
God, he was using that too. A 6-band.
Yeah, there's pictures. There's pictures of him with a MXR 6-band, which we could say that maybe that was an amp that was the slave amp that being pushed with the EQ, right? And then that is fanning out to all the other amps.
Now, Schultz was talking about the MXR stuff, right? Tom Schultz. And he brought up something I think that's overlooked, is that if you could put enough signal into those units in front of them, like the EQ, they quiet up. The hiss goes away. So there's, if you're running, let's say, a line out from another amplifier.
Yeah, sorry. If you're running at a line level or something, yeah, sure, right. Sure. Then maybe that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, these are all interesting,
but it doesn't really make sense with the mid bump. Then
that mid bump
doesn't make sense.
If you take one of these blue EQs, there's one around here somewhere, and you set it that way and put it in front of an amplifier, you sound more like Randy Rhoads than you do Eddie. Yeah. Right? It's kind of nasally, way too mid. So,
but there's some of what I know is that some of the loading of the signal that he was getting, that was there to kind of make up for I've heard some of that too. That was there to make up for some of the loss. Really, you should have put it at the beginning, but
by the way, this is the picture that
Bruce, Bruce Egnater pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real well.
He told me a story. I don't know him very well at all, but I've met him a few times at amp shows. And he told me a story about going to work or one day or whatever. And he gets a call from Cesar Diaz. No, it's not Cesar Diaz. Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah. About the pedal board problem and how basically it was so poorly wired, but the fact that they had a buffer in the front of it made it actually work. But without that buffer, there was no chance in hell that this rig would have been functional at all, and he rewired the whole thing for him. So it's something similar.
Yeah, and then he had another good one with Stevie Ray Vaughan too. It's like he had gone. He said it on our show. He had gone to service some amps for Stevie Ray Vaughan, right? And he, okay, what amps do you have? Well, I have a Dumble. Still Story Singer, and I have bunch of Fenders. He goes, okay. So he gets off the phone. He's like, I don't have no idea what a steel string singer is really, or what's in it or what to expect to bring. And he goes, I just called Dumble and he answered the phone. And he goes, I asked him, so I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go down and service Stevie Ray Vaughan's blah, blah, blah. And I just want to know a little bit about the amp before I go there.
Oh my God.
Little, so I'm prepared for what I'm doing. He told him it's basically an SVT power section and this and that. And, he goes there and he looks at it. He goes, not only is it an SVT, it's actually an Ampeg power section with transformers and everything. He goes, I'm very familiar with that. So, he goes, that's not an issue. And then, he was talking about the tech, and the tech was like, so what other issues do you have? So tech's like, first off, he goes, well, we have the steel string singer that's having this issue. He goes, yeah, I know. I talked to Alexander about it. The tech's like, you talked to Alexander?
That's right. I remember this story now.
We've been trying to get him on the phone for months.
Yeah.
And
That's
like,
why we called
he goes,
you.
yeah, I just called and he just answered.
He called me, picked up.
So, and then the other
I'm
things
surprised
he said,
that he didn't like try to kill him.
yeah,
You're gonna
the other
open up
things
my amplifier?
Yeah.
It's
The
a
other
goop.
things he said was like, so the other problems with the Fenders, he goes, yeah. So see this amp? He goes, Stevie runs it like this. And it was like the EQs were kind of dimed, right? Stevie runs it like this. But this amp, it's too bassy like that. And he goes, okay, well, you know, you have a bass knob. You can just turn the bass knob down.
We don't do that.
He goes, no. Can you change it so when the bass knob's on 10, it sounds the same as the other amp? Yeah, but you have a knob. No. He won't. He wants it so it looks like it's on 10. Okay. Change a cap, you know.
He's another
yeah.
one, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
You know,
turn everything up all the way.
Yeah, want to turn it up. Who's to argue? It was a great guitar.
You can't argue with the talent. That's
Oh, well,
one.
his hands were monstrous.
Because they need to have things the way they need, and that's just the end of it, right?
I got to see him play once, and it was just mind-boggling good.
It was.
I wish.
Yeah.
It's like
I
crazy.
saw him open for the Allman Brothers on the pier in Chelsea Pier.
Mhm.
Back in the day next to the Intrepid. He opened for Greg Allman. It was like 1986 or something like that.
Oh.
And I was like, man, everybody wanted to go see Greg Allman. I was like, I want to see this guy Stevie Ray Vaughan, because I'd heard you know, a couple of songs off that first album. I was like, this guy's fucking amazing. And he was relentless. That was one. Dave, you were right on. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. The energy that came out of him was just like he was
on fire all the time. Just on fire.
And
it's like crazy.
Superhuman. Only maybe Hendrix could have been like that. I never obviously got to Hendrix, but I'd imagine like that.
It was so good, man. Oh my God, it was so good. And this was a tour he was doing with BB King opening up.
Oh wow.
So I got to see BB King play, which was great too. Different kind of great. And then opening for that. And then later that tour, it was Jeff Beck opening for Stevie Ray, and then he died.
Right, that was the tour with Jeff.
Yeah, that was the tour. It was the last tour I got to see.
Yeah.
And then I think he was playing with wasn't it Beck and Clapton that they were doing a show or something like that? And then
Clapton was supposedly the one that put him on the chopper, right?
Yeah, they were all like kind of like, well, if you want to go, you can, or I forget what it was, but there was some like, that Clapton was supposed to be on there also, if I remember correctly.
Something to do with that.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but I could be
strange.
Bad Mac Bass and Bass. What's up, man? Thanks for the super chat. Is the gel based on a JCM 800? Well, the lead channel is.
The lead channel in the in mode is a JCM 800, and in the higher gain mode, it's hopped up JCM 800, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
Let's see.
That all came from the fact that he loves Plexis. So one channel was a Plexi, and he would run the master on 10. So literally was a Plexi. And he wanted one that just boosted it a little bit. So actually an 800 circuit with the master on 10 really is just boosting a kind of a Plexi circuit a little bit.
Right.
You know, this is the cold clipper stage.
Yeah.
And
10K there.
And it works. You know, maybe he has the gain down a little bit, but it works. It get a little bump to the Plexi on 10 thing. And that worked. But then, you know, for mere mortals, we wanted to give a sound that people could get a higher gain sound at a lower volume. You know?
Yeah, without having to
came up with a higher gain version of it, which he loves. Actually, he likes that at home himself.
That's cool. Jim A 5150 again. What's up, man? Now that you brought that up, would you explain why Ed's Marshall sounded so different from like VH1 or Fair Warning compared to say Diver Down in 1984? Besides more use of the Eventide, the 1984 sounds clean and crunchy. It definitely sounds cleaner. Doesn't sound as distorted.
I don't know if did the amp really sound okay. VH1 sounded different. VH2, Fair Warning. Okay.
Women and Children sounded a lot like one.
Women and Children sounded more like one. Kind of, but not really.
And Fair Warning just seemed to be like
Fair Warning was
heavier.
Fair Warning. Then it kind of got away from the reverb on one side kind of thing and all this, and it got into a different thing. And I think it was a hotter pickup at the time. Maybe even a JB. It's a hypothetical.
That would make
it actually
sense.
sounds sort of that way to me.
Like that. Yeah,
it does. Yeah,
and but to me, but all those records to me have a common ground sort of that run through them that to me sort of sound like the same amp. Let me tell you this: if you gonna go in a recording studio and record your one amp that you have the same way 6 times, 5 times,
it'll sound different.
It's going to be very different.
It's extraordinarily difficult to reproduce
and
accurately. Extraordinary.
How he was using, how he set up, what pickups he was using, what guitars he was using, all that stuff comes into play. Yes, 1984 seems cleaner. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, also the health of the amplifier, right? I mean, I think there's some. You would know this because you've seen the amp at some point, right?
I saw the amp, and I restored the amp.
Restored it. I mean, how many output transformers, power transformers do you think had been through that amplifier since it was in rose petals?
Not the power transformer, actually.
Not the power.
The output transformer had been changed a million times.
A million times, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that could also explain the sound on one, because, a load, if you have an internal short somewhere inside that transformer that's not completely grounding the amplifier out, it could be at some point in the winding structure that allows signal to still pass capacitively and as well as inductively. And it could reflect the load back to the power tubes that could change it down to almost nothing.
Or you could explain it just by the fact that one amp was slaved into a front of another amp, turned up, and it got more distorted.
Absolutely.
And more gnarly and brighter. And, my favorite is Van Halen 2, personally.
Yes.
I think that whole record, as in general, the drums, the bass, everything sounds incredible to me. And to me, it sounds like the amp is about to blow up still. It still has that thing, Yeah,
it's definitely out there. Like when you hear but if you hear let's say that when he brings up on Dead or Alive, right, brings up the chord of the first right on the opening, like, blah, and then you listen to how long it takes to generate into feedback. To me, it's not like it's super gained out, right?
No,
like that, and that's getting into the whole compression versus gain versus distortion sort of thing, in which we're talking about.
Yeah,
but it doesn't sound like it's a gained up amplifier. Like it has a lot of preamp gain. It sounds like it's I would expect an amplifier to sound like a Plexi cranked to hell.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
by the way, can I just show that picture?
Let's see what we got.
I wanted to show that picture before. This is the one where I thought it looked like he was slaving.
It could be. This was the more club days, and he always had.
And what's with that?
That's a 50-watt amp on top of a 100-watt amp now. And the Vox was supposedly a backup. So you could hypothesize that the 100-watt amp, which is his main amp's the bottom one, was slaved into maybe one of these other ones.
It's absolutely in the realm of possibility. It can't be discounted.
But it's the bright cap's still throwing me off, unless the bright caps were cut out. Then that doesn't throw it off too much.
Yeah,
that happened a lot with those amps.
It did. I mean, who's to say too there wasn't any internal monkeying going on inside the amplifier too that might bring an input into the phase inverter or into the cathode follower?
I like that sound.
Yeah, that sounds great.
You did that in one video where you took your Marshmallow amp and put it into the power section of a
it sounds
amp, that sounds great.
That sounds great. I mean, all right, so I did some work for AC/DC a few years ago, fixing a bunch of their amplifiers. Trace got a bunch from Voodoo. I got a bunch.
Oh wow, nice.
And I saw some really strange stuff in those things. I'll be honest with you. I mean,
Did Trace do
there's
it?
an NDA. What's that?
Did Trace do it?
Trace, no. This is going way back. This was like, but I would call them remnants or relics of mods that were in the amps at one point or another. And these were amps that had, you know, writing on them as to what they were used for, like Razor's Edge amp.
Yeah.
You know, Malcolm's favorite for this had all notes written on the amplifiers. Now there's some NDAs that, you know, you got to sign, so I can't say exactly what it is, but there were mods in these amplifiers that would make you not understand how they were performing the way they were from the inputs of the amplifiers. Like when you plugged into the front end of the amplifier, you may not have been being plugged into the front end of the amplifier. So there's always that possibility that, you know, something else is going on there.
Sure.
You know,
that's possible.
Yeah,
for sure. And that would be my preference, to take a Marshall loaded down, maybe send it through an EQ. And then,
well, if you put it into the cathode follower, and then it sounds pretty cool too.
Yeah,
you can use the EQ section.
Do that too.
You know,
and if you look at some Jose mods, that's how the loops were too. Some of them, the little passive loops he had in the back were before the cathode follower, sometimes after the first gain stage. So I've seen them both ways.
Okay, all right. Now, in all the amps that you saw,
I'm going to be right back.
No
Maybe
problem.
Mark,
All right, so
maybe find a question that works.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, let's see that tattoo. Show the people the Eddie tattoo. We got to see this thing. It's awesome.
Okay. It's not ready yet, though. It's
but a tease of it. How about that?
Let me stop sharing this. I'll stand up and I'll show it. So
yeah. Got to check this thing out.
See if people can see it.
I just love the hands in there, like the pinky stretch that he's got going on when he's just hammering for eruption there. Yeah, that's a heck of a tattoo.
We got to finish the face right there.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do that tomorrow. So yeah.
Is that got a wrap on it right now? It doesn't look like it.
No, we're letting it dry tonight.
Okay.
Just
how's it feeling?
It's a little sore, but it's all right. I'm surviving.
Okay.
Good. Yeah. That's it. Almost done. It's going to look like a photo once we're.
I mean, the artwork is just, you know, the artist is just really good. I mean, we were talking before about how well he did Ed's hands. I mean, hands are so hard to draw.
That's a shame.
Oh my God! Look at the tendons. They're just like Eddie's tendons.
Yeah, she went all in, man. Like seriously. So yeah, it's a little sore. It's throbbing. But do you have any tattoos?
No, I'm scared.
Oh, you know what? I understand. I went for it. I waited till I was like 45.
Okay.
And then I got it. You know, I got my first one. I actually I have an Iron Man over here.
Oh wow.
So
very cool. I saw it. You like Marvel, right?
Yeah. I'm a big Marvel guy.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Because I saw in an earlier video you had Captain America.
Like Shield. Yeah. Those are the old days. I used to have all my stuff. Yep.
Now cool. Your room's been taken over with amps.
It's The comic book collection has been kind of moved over, and it's just all amps. But
now it's all amplifiers.
Yeah.
I keep telling him he's got to add on. He's got to add on to his house.
Yeah, I got the Plex up here.
Yeah.
This is a vintage modern.
Yeah.
Then Dave's BE, which is 4x12 behind me.
Nice.
Yeah. And I'm running it with a wet, dry, wet there, and other way. And then
got a power station up there, right?
Power station, yeah.
And I got two 1x12s right there. The power station is running the Plex or the what is it? The JTM.
20-watt JTM Marshall thing.
20-watt JTM Marshall. And then the other one, this one over here, is a modded Marshall mini Plexi, the 20-watt Plexi.
All right.
That's modded by Shay and Jason Tong. So they did a great job. They did like a Jose thing on it. And then I got a Soldano over here, and then an EVH, and then the little sister and the gel, the J Keeley. So
that's a good collection right there.
Not too bad. I should probably stop. but
No.
but that's all right.
Stop.
I'll keep
I have
going.
over. I have over. Are we doing show and tell? You can't see mine so well. You can kind of just see the on my right side there. This side.
Yeah.
You can see. So I have my 50-watt Plexi that's on the top, on far one.
Yeah, the
And
Fawn
then
one.
a brown face Bandmaster with a harmonic tremolo.
Oh man,
those sound so delicious.
Yeah.
And then we have below that, hard to see it. It's a high watt PA head that's converted to DR103 specs, but
Nice.
Stevie Fryette's favorite version of it. And then just a Fawn JMP master volume standard. I bought that.
those.
I bought that on a whim when I was in New York. And
What store did you get it at?
No, I didn't get it in the store. I bought it online.
Okay. All right.
Guitar Center. Then of course they shipped it and wrecked it. But I fixed it. But they gave me a lot of money off, so that worked out good.
It was almost free.
And
right?
then I have the 100-watt Jose, 100-watt Jose below it, and then I got a bunch of my amps too in the other side of my room here. You can't see, but
I can see a few.
In the vintage cabs, I have one with black backs and one with the old 65s.
Nice. Yeah.
Both are cool sounding, different.
I like the blackback cabs. I do.
Yeah, that particular blackback cab. I had two blackback cabs at the same time that I bought from the same source.
That's when Lynch got his too.
We got really good deals, man. Like $600 for one of them, and $700. This was only a couple years ago, or several years, maybe. Well, right at the pre-pandemic.
It's I can't ship these things factor too, right?
Some guy tipped me off to it, and we went over to this pawn shop that had these. They were awesome. I got two identical cabinets with identical speakers. One was supposed to be different speakers, and I always thought it was until I took the back off, and then I found out it was the same. They sound drastically different. The two cabinets, and the particular cabinet I kept. It was just like kind of magically great. So, and B. Thorne's got one too that's magically great. He uses on all his videos. And then, so that other cabinet, a friend of mine got a cabinet and he got from me and had 65-watt speakers. And how did this work? I don't even remember now. Somehow I wound up with this other checkerboard cabinet with old 65-watt speakers too. The original issue of them. And that's a cool sound also. And together, those two cabinets together is pretty awesome.
The little blend factor.
Yeah, the blend factor of the grittier cab and the cleaner cab. But
the
cleaner cab is kind of heavy sounding. So like the two together just sound really cool.
It is strange how, every example of something. I mean, there's definite DNA that runs through examples of speakers, but it seems every piece of equipment has its own personality. So like you'll get like these cabinets and you'll start micing them and you go to each speaker.
Oh, crazy.
These all sound different.
Radically different.
Yeah.
Even if you're really careful about putting the mic in the exact same spot in every speaker.
Yeah.
Which is almost impossible to do, but relatively in the same spot. They sound radically different. Yeah. When I was doing my 2 notes pack I have of speakers, even my favorite cabinet in the shop, we took it out and mic'd every speaker to find which one we were going to actually use. And it's like we recorded each, take. It's like listening back, you're going, yeah, speaker 1, that's the one. That's for sure the one. Well, maybe 2. Wait, no, 1. No, 1. And then you go back and forth. You narrow it down to 2, and you'd be going back and forth on the console, and you're like, nah, it's 1.
That's funny,
but radically different.
Yeah, the speakers
they do. There's no question about that. I did get a chance to see Van Halen in 2015 when they went out. My buddy Jim was working for Wolfie, so they came through Raleigh. Yeah,
Jim Service.
Yeah, Jim's a bud. So Tim was like, "Why don't you come out?" So I was like, "Cool, we'll go out there and for sound check or whatever and hang out for a little bit." And JD was doing the drums, and he worked with Aerosmith, so it was some people that we knew. And Ed was sound checking, and I was watching him, and he was trying to decide which one of the speakers on that cabinet that was on the bottom he was going to use to mic up, and he came up to it, but I think he had changed his mind maybe because he was pointing at one corner of the cabinet. He was like, "No, this one. I want this one today," or something along those lines. So I guess people change their minds too, right? Which one's going to sound good on any given day? So it's got to be hard to pick out your favorite out of your favorite cabinet.
Yeah, I would imagine. Simon Hosford, what's up, Simon?
Hey, Simon.
You know Simon? Do you guys know Simon?
Yeah. Simon actually, he had emailed me a while ago. He's a guitar player. Is
amazing
very
guitar
good
player.
Van Halen
He's a big Van Halen guy. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, you emailed me, Simon. I'm so sorry. I've been like, this summer's been nuts, man. I will get back to you. I promise.
Oh, the DI. Oh, that's what he wants. So that's another rabbit hole thing, right? So that's what we're here for, is the rabbit hole. So listening to the extended high frequency range on the recorded sounds of Van Halen 1, right? Like maybe 25 years ago or something, I'm thinking about that sound. And I'm like, all right, if I take the actual record, hook my stereo up to my 412 cabinet and listen to it through that, and listen to Eruption through my 412 cabinet, it loses all that top end information, right? So the greenbacks are not putting up. Obviously, they have a curve. They have a severe drop off, like, after 3K. And you can definitely tell that, there's information that goes well beyond 3K on Van Halen 1, right? There's that Angora-like fuzzy, fizzy stuff on the top, right? So theorizing where that came from could be like a Dolby noise reduction trick, like that kind of thing. It could be, that the EQs are doing it. It could be the result of compressors. It could be the result of, some sort of distortion, harmonic distortion that's being used to
create a different
speaker frequency range. Could be a different speaker, like a JBL, something.
Well, actually,
like that.
like later that kind of came out that it wasn't JBLs and that it was Radio Shack speakers that were
I got the Radio Shack speaker.
Yeah.
This one right here is a Radio Shack, and it sounds like dog do.
Yeah, I bet. Probably brittle sounding and just like, awful.
Yeah. So I just theorized, well, why not make
also say
line out, right? Take a direct line out from the back of the amp, put it through the console, and you can shape that along the lines of, well, it seemed ridiculous until that Lukather interview where he was saying that was one of Landy's things that he always liked to do, was to take a line out from your amp and bring it directly to the console, and he would use it for pulling little frequencies that he wanted to kind of like patch the sound together, like spackle or something. Yeah. Isn't that Luke video
where that came from, that theory?
Well, it's kind of confirmed it for me that Landy would have done that,
Could that have happened? I wish I could get him on the show.
Oh man, to get Don Landy on. That guy's it's like he must have an NDA or something. Like,
yeah, he doesn't say.
He doesn't.
I don't. You know what? Here's the thing. If it was used, if that was used, I've heard, like, I've listened to the mic'd raw isolated tracks. I don't know if that was used, but it doesn't quite sound like that to me. Sounds like a very bright speaker and or a very bright miking technique and or an EQ'd very bright miking technique.
It could be.
Pete Thorne took that isolated track and
blending it.
Pete Thorne took the isolated track and
did your lights go out?
They did for a second. I'm surprised the whole computer didn't shut down.
Yeah, you were able to maintain your internet too.
I guess so. When he analyzed that on an EQ match thing, there was a large, it looked like EQ'd high end 13K, high end bright, but like a sharp rise. like not something normal that you would see. It's like deliberately EQ'd rise, and a deliberate on the low end too. There was a bump too, and I mean, he was convinced. He goes, "That just has to be console EQ to me. That just doesn't look
the interesting
like."
Thing though, I would just say is this is just speculation, and physics is something that I really like, right? So the physics of how EQs work also happen in the environment around you, right? In terms of being able to move frequencies against each other, right? To narrow cues, to widen cues, to pull out definitive frequencies, comb filtering, all of these things that are phenomenon that, you know, happen naturally in the real world, as well as trying to be replicated in cues. You can have things that look like EQ artifacts through combinations of different signals that are slightly in or out of phase with one another too. So it opens up a whole, you know, it's just a mystery that I don't think we'll ever have an answer to. You know,
I kind of get the feeling that if that was ever used, it was never used again past the first record. And again, that could be some of the stuff that Ed said he didn't like. And, you know, that was the thing.
1984 has a little bit of a direct sound to me sometimes. You know, sometimes it sounds like 3 amplifiers being recorded at the same time, like a clean air amplifier, a dirtier amplifier, and then something that's almost a direct sound. You know, it has a really bizarre kind of sound to it. Same thing with Women and Children First. That has a very extended high frequency range as well to my ear. 2, like you're saying, is the most
not
natural.
like the greatest sounding record. Actually, you know, then you know, also, you know, Diver Down was also a little odd.
That was an outlier.
There were some really cool songs on it. There were a couple cool songs on it.
Oh, Full Bug for
like amazing. Yeah,
you know, I mean,
even little guitars,
but it still sounded like Ed's sound. You know what I mean? Like there's still the common ground on all the sounds. You know,
still Ed.
I still think, you know.
Yeah. By the way, we were talking about my tattoo earlier, and Ozzy, when we were talking last night, we were talking about Van Halen fans and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So someone wrote, and this is really funny. Jimmy Ray Hawkins wrote, "Caleb says the stripes are wrong." And I know Caleb
called it.
That's just so funny. It's not about Caleb, but it's just that, you know, someone would say, "Oh, the stripes are going the wrong way," or something. You know, like,
perfect. You're gonna get somebody that's calling you like that. The case wear on the case wear right here is in the wrong place.
Right, exactly. Oh, it's
it's like, fuck off.
No, that's like he's just joking. Caleb, you know, that's all good, man.
Absolutely. That's funny.
But let's go to some of the other super chats. Oh, I just wanted to say, because Simon, he said to paraphrase the classic Ossie victory chant, "Ossie, Ossie, Ossie, oi, oi, oi." Great chat, gents. Oh, that I guess that's what they do in Australia.
I guess so.
No.
Oh. Yeah, right. And on the guys that are on your T-shirt right there, oi.
Yeah, oi. That's right. Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Even though they're Welsh Australians,
right? But you have to say it with power. You know, oi. You know,
oi.
Like, yeah. I'm a huge. You know, just recently I just started. I was streaming some AC/DC, and I just put it on. You know, mixed, whatever, just play whatever. And I had like an hour drive, and I was just like, man, they're so good. They're just so good. They're such a great band, you know, like really.
Angus's guitar playing is just, it's absurd how good of a player he is. And you listen to him, like, if he's just playing blues, he's not playing like AC/DC music,
right?
Or playing, you know, almost bebop. I mean, he's just such a gifted person. It's just amazing.
Oh, he's great with the blues, like Night Prowler. You know, just some of those songs. You know, there's like he was
Ride
great.
On.
Yep. Good stuff. Let's see. Son of Pyro, thank you. Ozzy, thanks. Ozzy, anything in that rack that you particularly fond of?
This rack here.
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a fond of all of it right there. So there's like, an old
Why would you
amplifier.
have it if you're not fond of it?
Exactly. I hate this crap. So get it out of here. Yeah. The 1176s, right? You gotta love those things. They create, they make things sound like they're in spaces that don't exist in reality to me. It's like they create rooms that don't exist in reality. You gotta love those. Pultec EQs, that could be the source.
Gotta love that too. Gotta
love Pultecs. And Eventide harmonizers. I've always loved those things. Gotta love them. And then API, a strip of API you can never go wrong with either for trying to get your guitar sounding.
Yeah.
Everything you need probably is right there.
Yeah. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I'm staring at that. Actually, I have an API in front of me. I have an 1176 in front of me. I have a distressor.
Nice. Oh, the distressor. That's tasty.
A distressor can be cool on guitars actually too. And I have a Alan Smart SSL bus compressor.
Wow.
Fun too. C1.
That's amazing. You know what's amazing too? You're talking about bus compressors. I saw where the board that was in 5150 that was used for recording 1984 went for sale on Reverb, I guess.
Yeah.
And they had some of the strips taken apart so you could look in there and see what they were. And it looked like those had optical compressors in them.
Could have been. That was the original, the Universal Audio one, right?
I'm not sure. Right now, I'm not sure who made it.
Yeah, it was a Universal Audio console.
Okay.
Escapes me what the channel strip was, but
yeah,
I don't think any of this has. I mean, they recorded at all sorts of studios, and it's. I mean, that can just come into play too. Where they recorded it, what echo chamber. I was fortunate enough when I did my 2 Notes pack to be down at Sunset Sound, so we got to hear. We got to hear like a Plexi with the echo chamber. I gotta tell you, it's pretty fucking great.
I'm sure. Now, interestingly enough, it looked like there was a JBL in the monitor that was in the room, right?
Yeah.
Was that still there?
In the echo chamber?
Yeah.
Itself? Yeah, we had a picture of that.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, we posted it, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was some big old PA basically in there. Essentially, I don't remember exactly what it was.
Was it a 12? What was in there?
I'd have to reference the picture again.
Okay.
I don't totally remember, but it was definitely very old school. What was going on there? But man, they had it in the room. You could just bring it up, on anything, and it was just like, oh yeah, there we go.
Did they ever move that monitor around in the room for different effects?
No,
or
they're pretty.
Like
they were
right
pretty. Like don't touch anything. You shouldn't even look at it.
Okay.
So I don't know. In fact, I think they got pissed that the one assistant let us look at it.
All right. Yeah.
But they were a little
That could
uptight.
be almost trade secrets.
So.
Yeah.
Mark, which amp guitars have you been into playing recently? So Son of Pyro, I picked this up recently. Dave, I didn't even tell you this. I got this.
Wow.
It's a
cool Axis.
Is
that a Ball Family Reserve?
Axis.
It's a Ball Axis Super Sport Ball Family Reserve.
Yeah, it's a reserve. Yeah.
And look at the back of the neck.
Oh, wow.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I got that. This was a limited run called Black Sugar in 2010 or 2011. So it's a sparkle paint.
So does that still have the pickups that were in the EVH one?
Yes, they're exact same EVH.
Yeah, those are cool.
They are cool. They sound.
That's the one guitar I wish I had.
And this is a flat top, so it's I like it. It's really nice, and it's got the arch, in the back.
Yeah.
I would really like Ernie Ball stuff. Oh, and stainless steel frets. So
they're definitely quality,
Yeah, they really make some awesome stuff. I've been wanting to get one of these guitars for a long time.
Yeah.
Did I show the last time we were on the air the V I got?
No, I don't. What? Maybe you did show it. I can't remember. I don't remember. But pull it out. Let's see it. Oh yeah, you did show it. But yeah, let's see it again. What the hell? Ooh.
Ibanez rock and roll.
That's
V.
rock and roll.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's awesome. How's the neck on it? Is it fat?
Flat and
No.
wide.
Not really.
No?
Not really.
Oh, cool.
It's not
It's gotta
that
be close
fat.
to like the Destroyer neck, right?
Yeah, it's more like the Destroyer neck, which isn't huge.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
The
Uh,
Destroyer neck is really
then-
comfy.
Yeah, so then the next up in my quest will be the Destroyer.
Got
I have to have the Destroyer, and I had to have the V. I just need to have the match pair for some reason.
The Destroyer will cost you.
Unfortunately, yes. I saw one couple that were okay priced, but
what's
not
okay
like they
price?
were like when Pete Thorne got his. It was like $2,500.
Oh my God.
You know, and that was not that long ago. That was like a few years ago.
Wow.
I think
Yeah.
I paid
Pre-COVID
like
prices.
800 for mine.
How much? 600?
Like 800.
Oh, fuck you.
Oh, I don't know if someone's going to be watching this who is. So there's someone, Scott Garrison, right? He's a guy from New York who bought a couple of blockheads for me, and he came by where I was building them, and he was looking for a guitar, and I offered him the Ibanez Destroyer. I was like, this is probably the guitar you want to have if you want to play Van Halen.
Mm.
And he passed on it. And I was like, now I'm thankful.
Yeah.
Well, luckily I got to trade an amp for this one.
Oh, nice.
So, although I haven't made the amp yet, so your amp's coming. I promise.
It'll be on its way.
I promise it's coming soon, very soon.
And the amp that I've been playing, besides that Ernie Ball, I've been playing the Plex a lot. You can see the cord is plugged into it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've been playing that, and that's going into the power station, going into the wet, dry, wet.
Yeah,
So
sounds good, right?
sounds killer. Sounds awesome.
You have to say that though.
Yeah, no, you're paying me. I know you're paying me. No. I mean, it really does sound great. It does. It's awesome. And then Dave, I know you're prepping for Gearfest. This is like a multi-question thing here. Dave, I know you're prepping for Gearfest, but any interesting items walk into your shop recently?
There's something that walked into my shop that eventually you'll find out about, but I can't say anything about. So,
Another episode of Tone Talk.
there will be lots of information about it in latter times.
Wow. Okay.
So
What's that Fender combo by you?
oh, that's a Princeton that someone brought me to do something to that I keep avoiding.
Nice.
I don't really want to do anything to it. Maybe that's why.
Wayne Tone Seeker Anderson, what's up, man? Ossified.
Ossified. There we go. I like that.
Ossified. Yeah, when you drink a whole mason jar full of corn squeezins, that's gonna.
I was
happen.
going to say, man, was that
What
water
is
or
that?
Is that moonshine?
That's Kakalaki corn squeezins, friend.
So that's like a moonshine then, right?
It's moonshine.
No, it's just water.
I like the other story better.
I wouldn't be able to stay if this was real moonshine. I
You'd
drink
already fallen over.
Yeah, you were
dead.
dead. Exactly. I was going to say, I'm impressed.
He's already fallen over.
Yeah. Oh my God! Speaking of falling over, my God, I have to tell a story. So I'm getting the tattoo done today, right? And I go to get up on the table. You know, they have like these tables, and I go to get up on the table, and like the pillows were positioned in a certain way, and I positioned my butt too far on the end of the table, and I got on, and the whole table collapsed, and I fell over backwards.
Oh man.
Yeah, and landed like kind of hit the back of my head on like this thing, but thankfully I was fine, like just a little sore, but I'm fine. But I was just so fucking embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Just like this, I just went just totally toppled over. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, shit happens.
Hopefully you
Yeah.
won't feel it tomorrow.
I think I'm going to. I already kind of feel
The
it
more
now.
of this gray shit that comes in, the more I get in pain in the morning.
I know. 55. I'm 55.
Oh, then I
man.
fucking can't walk then. With all my gray.
I can't wait for mine to go totally white. Actually, I'm like sick of like just this like.
Well, you and
temple
I are in the
stuff.
same
I would
boat.
sort of take a little bit of color.
Yeah, but I look like Paulie Walnuts.
I don't know. I just went real early, so
That's true. I got
whatever.
I got the Paulie
It
walnuts.
looks like Billy Idol's hair.
Well, yeah. I mean, Dave, your hair looks good, but is that naturally white? That your hair like that? Is that naturally white like that, or did you dye it that color?
No. This is the natural color.
Wow.
Yeah. This is the total silvery white.
Fox. You're the silver fox.
Silver fox, yes, silver fox,
as they say. Jay McD.
Although occasionally, every once in a while, I still get the idea. So maybe I'll dye it again just for fun.
It looks good when you do it.
I don't know. I don't really care. If I do, it's just for fun. It's just like, I decided, sorry, I got a little younger.
Yeah. I was dyeing my hair.
I mean, I'm not that old.
No.
55 years old. So
we're all 55.
Yeah, we're all 55. 54. Exactly.
54?
55 soon.
See, that's the problem. When you get to this certain age, you forget everything.
Dude, I have to walk up the stairs saying what I'm going up the stairs to get, or when I get up there, I have no idea what I'm doing.
You're standing there going, why did I come up here?
I know.
I got to go back downstairs to remember what I came up here for.
Yeah.
So
no,
I'll be looking at my phone and go, oh, where's my phone? I've done that where you're just like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Stan Mucha, Tony Alemia provided EVH in the early 80s with the power transformers. He has a recipe to prove it. A receipt, I guess he means. Receipt to prove it. I had a talk with him. You guys should talk to him. Tony.
Powers or outputs?
I think that might have been outputs because I didn't see a lot of change transformers in anything. I know for a fact he used to blow output transformers all the time. And so the story goes with that. So in the early days, right, they had a box of 6 CA7 power tubes, right?
Yep.
And so say a tube bread plates.
Right.
They just grab one from the box and throw it in.
That's what everybody did.
No regards to matching whatsoever. So maybe one tube is reading crazy current. Maybe one other tube is reading cold. Maybe one is. And so what had happened, and this was story from Rudy Laren, what had happened at some point in time after blowing a bunch of output transformers and different things, which could have been slightly a mix of that and how he was loading things down and doing things like that. Jose came up with the idea, hey, let's give you matched tubes. Because Jose traveled with him in the early days and replacing transformers.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was
a box of output transformers from Marshall. Yeah. He said, let's match the tubes. And so he started providing him with matched sets of tubes. And then they stopped blowing transformers.
That would make sense.
When did Jose stop making mods on amps? Like what year?
I mean, he worked right until he died, pretty much. I think he died in, was it 94?
Okay.
That sounds right. When did he start? Where was the meeting?
I don't know when he started.
You see, and who made the introduction?
I don't know. Well, I think I think he might have started in the late 70s, but I don't know if he developed a mod per se then.
Right, but
he was servicing.
That would have been,
I don't know.
Giving him
he worked with Ed from the first record.
Right, he was there for the first record.
So he was his amp. He had a antiquated tube amp repair shop, in the 70s.
Was he like close by in the neighborhood, like somehow?
He was in Sherman Oaks. Yeah.
And Ed was in Pasadena.
Ed was in Pasadena. I don't know how he heard. Probably heard. Jose used to work for Ampeg years ago, and then he opened his own shop.
Did he work for Vox too? I heard.
Maybe.
And he did the Super Beetle.
Maybe yeah. And when they first met, I don't know how that happened. I don't know.
You see, that would be.
But surely by the very early 80s, Jose was a doing amp mods.
Yeah.
Now we know that Ed did have a Jose modded Marshall.
How
right?
do we know that?
Well, you said that there was that he'd sent. Well, James Brown said on our show that he was told that they were going to send him a Jose modded Marshall that they wanted to use as the platform for the PV amp originally. And he said that they were going to send that to him.
Yeah, but I don't think it was modified per se. I mean, I think it might have been slightly tweaked, but I've never ever seen a Jose modded Marshall that belonged to Ed. Now, I've seen Jose slightly modified Marshalls that belonged to Ed. He often changed the impedance selectors to a beefier one because, you know, those ones that they fall out essentially and get loose or shitty, and then you blow up output transformers.
Would he put remote standbys in a lot of the amps too?
I've seen that in a couple. Yeah,
a remote standby. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, kind of weird. If you know what it is, it's a little bit weird that it goes out to a foot switch and back.
Yeah, and it was lifting the cathodes, if I remember.
Lifting the cathodes of the Whenever I get a Jose and I go to that jack and I just jumper across the jack with a jumper because a switchcraft jack, the normaling, oh no. No. They always have issues over the years.
Yeah.
But surprisingly though, I've never seen one that actually had an issue when it came in. That's so weird. But just in case, I put a hole plug in the hole of the jack and I jumper over it because no way.
You don't need it. You don't need it, especially with the switching systems they have now. There's no reason for that.
Don't need it.
No. But it was an interesting thing.
I mean, here's the thing. I think Jose for mods, you know, was probably way ahead of his time. Way ahead of his time, and by far the best modder of that era. Because the Paul Rivera and Lee Jackson ones, no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have you heard Lee Jackson mods over the years?
Yeah, actually, I had one that picked up at East Coast. No, it wasn't mine. It was Keith's.
Did you ever like it?
East Coast Music Mall. It was too loud to understand what it was actually doing.
Yeah, right. And it I don't know, man. I've never heard at least the early mods. I mean, like later when he did some production amps later on, like after even Metaltronics, like with Ampeg or things like that, I've heard those sound pretty decent. Okay. But the early mods that he was doing, to me, I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. And compared to a Jose of the same era, you're like, oh God, fuck no, this one.
Right.
All day long, you know?
I always preferred just the straight amp, you know, like that 50 water back there. I never really messed with ever. And it was like, if I needed a little bit of a boost, I used an EQ pedal in front of it, like a DOD EQ. And then I had it, you know,
simple, right?
Into a Marshall 9000 power amp. And that was all I needed, you know?
Yeah.
Or what was the DOD pedal? The FET boost thing they had with the tone knob. You know, it has a volume and a tone. Yeah, FET boost or something.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think it's FET something. Yeah, definitely.
Hang on, I'm going to find out. I want to speak properly. That is an awesome pedal. Yes. So the original one was BiFET preamp.
Oh, the BiFET.
The BiFET preamp FX10. So it had a tone knob and it's a clean boost. Yeah. But man, I bought one of those recently, and man, it actually is great. I forgot about it, and then I'm like
something in between the two. Like
someone reminded me online. You know, I forgot about that pedal. I had put it in a couple rigs over the years, and I forgot about the pedal, and I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. Oh wait, I want one of those. So I go online and go click.
Yeah, you can get one on Reverb right now.
Well, I was like, I could just make one. Oh, fuck that. I just bought it for the price.
There's one for $63 right now on
63.
Reverb.
Can't beat it.
Cool.
Hey, can I bail for a second and come right back?
Use the bathroom.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I got all those corn squeezings to get out of me.
Corn squeezing to get out. Yeah, sure, no problem.
Why
we got any more super chats here, Mark, that we can answer?
Yeah, YMESYDT.
Wow,
thanks
that's
for super chat. Yeah, that's a mouthful.
Why miss yacht? Why you I don't know.
It's got to mean something to him though. Is there a Plexi or Vox with a more scooped EQ of a super reverb? I used to run Strats into Plexis, but switched to humbuckers, and I'm missing clarity and openness.
Well, the Vox can potentially have quite a scooped EQ. But the Vox EQs are very interactive. So like if you were to turn the bass up a lot, all of a sudden it scoops the mids a lot. So yeah. A Vox top boost, would maybe do that.
Okay.
Or what's wrong with the super reverb? Scoop to super reverb and strats into Plexis, but switch to humbuckers.
He wants a more scooped EQ.
Yeah. I mean, Vox probably is more scooped than the Plexi is. I'm not sure if I answered you properly.
Or you could just turn the mid down.
Yeah, except that sounds like shit generally.
Yeah, and we don't it has to be all the way up.
I was saying the Vox EQs.
Yeah.
If you
100K slope and the 47 puff.
If you boost the bass and the treble a lot, at one point in time it really scoops. It just goes whoop,
Yeah, they're so
interactive.
The Vox EQs are so cool. Like the settings that you can get with those are just very unique to that kind of.
I like it.
Kind of a circuit. Yeah, I love it. The crazy eyeball setting, or the bass all the way down.
Oh, that's another one you didn't. Oh, there was two other amps next to me that you can't see. One is a copper top Vox AC30.
Nice.
With a top boost added in the back by Mark Sampson.
The white little added on?
No, not that. There was a box that was added by Mark Sampson.
Oh, by
originally.
Mark. Okay, yeah.
And then I have a blackface basement head too.
Nice. You got everything you need right there.
Kind of have. Yeah, that's it for the vintage thing. Oh, I have a Supro too, little Supro. I think kind of like the one you had. Didn't you have a Supro over there a minute?
I've got a little Super, like a 1508 or something. I don't know. It's a 1958.
Yeah, I have an old Supro that's a small
with the 6x9 in the back.
This one has a 10 in mine, but
has a 10. They just sound good.
They're cool.
And they're great for testing. Yeah.
That's cool. Guitars for your project. Thanks for the super chat. Have the Freeman BE100 Deluxe going from a Sir ISO box to cab on stage and through to an aux box pedal direct to front of house. Gain pedals in front, delay and verb in the effects loop. Okay. Do you prefer a volume pedal in the loop or in the line?
Well, do you want the volume pedal to clean up your guitar signal? Like if you want to turn it down, like turning down your guitar volume? Or do you want the volume pedal to just reduce, volume swells, to reduce the whole sound? So if you put it in the loop, you have the whole distortion and everything created in the amp, and then you're bringing it, up and down in volume, sort of like turning your master volume up and down. If you want the volume pedal to clean up the guitar signal, which is cool also, then you want it in front.
And and if you still lift it all the way up, it'll go off, right? I mean,
when it's all the way down, it'll be out of the equation.
Right. It's almost like rolling your guitar.
Well, it'll be out of the equation. Well, there's a couple things about the front end thing. So, one, I firmly believe you should use a low impedance pedal with a buffer in front of it, because any high impedance pedal can work, but immediately when you plug in, you're already losing a little top end because you're loading down the guitar more. So most high impedance volume pedals are 250K. And if you 500K guitar, let's say, you're already loading it down to lower than 250K. So you're automatically losing top end already. So I recommend just guitar into some sort of buffered source. That could be a tube screamer for all that matter. Into the low impedance volume pedal, and then it's all good.
Okay. Another one from Stan. Sorry for my bad typing skills on my phone here at work. Tony Alamia said it was power transformers. I even double checked with him that it was not OPTs because I thought it was the OPTs as well.
I don't know. Okay. Maybe
it's worth exploring.
Who knows? It's worth exploring. But what are you going to do different? I mean, more voltage, less voltage? What are you going to do? What's different? I don't really know if there's
nothing you can
more
do
current, less current. That's the only things you got.
Might be interesting to know why he had to keep replacing them. If he was,
so the so Ed's Marshall was a 12 series early Plexi Marshall. So now what's different about that era amp is the B plus.
Okay,
so
a little lower. Yeah.
The B plus of that era amp is roughly at bias, roughly around 460 volts, 465, vary a little bit up and down, but it's
not like its predecessor,
consistently 460 to 65 volts. I've worked on a million of those and they're all the same. In fact, I just worked on one from Mike Landau. That was a super bass 12 series, only a few numbers off from Ed's, 400, and that was 465 volts. And what I did is the total Ed thing with his amp and 6 CA7s. He bought this amp and had 6 CA7s already. Sylvania 6 CA7s. And so when I restored Ed's amp, I hypothesized on a few things because his amp had been changed a lot over the years. Like at one point it had been rewired with Teflon wire.
Yeah, it went out to that guy in Holland.
It had been rewired with Teflon wire at some point by someone.
Yeah,
and we actually took another old Marshall and pulled the wire out of it and used it for Ed's amp.
Okay.
So you had period correct wire. And that was excessive. Okay.
Why not? You got to go.
Why not? Yeah, it was the coolest amp in history. So why not?
Yeah,
right?
You got to do something like
that.
So,
and then, I also hypothesized that at some point in time, this amp had original filtering in it for what was the filtering of that era amp.
Of the 12 series amp. Yeah.
Which is, the mains were 200, 200s in series, so 50. The screens were 233s in series, essentially, which was 15. The now the phase inverter either was 40 or 50, have a dual
32 sometimes,
or occasionally it was just 100. So I've seen original ones with the dual 50-50 in it with 100 tied together. I've seen it with just half the 50. I've seen it also with a 40. So we went with the 100.
Okay.
Because it kind of didn't need to be squishier. It needed to be a little more, punchy. And then the preamp was dual 33. All recapped with F&Ts.
Yeah.
And then the thing that's a little bit I fully believe it was a lead spec for that era. Most of those were, the first cathode of the bright channel was a 820 ohm with a 0.68 across it. 0022 out of that stage. Generally speaking, in that era, it was a 0.68 across the first stage of the cathode follower, after the mixer resistors. But his amp had a fat cap across that.
Yeah.
Literally just paralleled across the 0.68 that was there. And that fat cap, that can be various values. I mean, it's just like at some point it stops being
it's full diminishing
range.
returns.
It's diminishing returns. Like a 22 microfarad cap is not much different from the 470 that was in it. So
yeah.
But the really interesting thing, so the feedback, I sort of guessed at on that one. So traditionally in the original amp, it would have been 16 ohm tap, or not 16 ohm tap, the speaker jacks through a 47K resistor.
Right.
But in seeing a bunch of other amps that Jose always did, he always used 100K 4 ohm tap. Always. But there was an original resistor in this one, so at 47K. So I went with 4 ohm tap 47K, which I actually quite like. Just a little less than the 100K. But you can play with that depending on amp to amp.
Right.
Every amp's a little different. You always have to remember that. They don't all sound the same in the end.
The interesting thing would be unloading the amplifier and its effect on the feedback.
Yeah,
how you load it is going to show, what
how
kind of
it's
voltage
loaded,
is getting
how
back
it reacts.
through that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I get that. And then let's see what else about that amp. So the other interesting thing is it had an original 50K mid pot.
That's significant.
Which I think is all about the fact they just didn't have the 25K in stock at that day. Hey, this is close.
This is close enough, right?
So
surprised they didn't put a 250K
mid pot
in there. Really, the numbers are right.
Is really sort of the key for me.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, like a stock Marshall, when you dime everything at 10, you can see it on a scope even. If the treble's at 10, you see a little like notch that happens on the waveform, and it sounds like sort of like you turn the mid down. It sounds terrible, right? It's like a crashing kind of sound. And his amp didn't do that. And this is when I actually investigated, and it was a 50K mid pot. And you could turn everything on 10, and you could see it in the waveform, and you're like, no, it's not doing that. Huh.
So it had the little peak there, and then it went flat and then down. And
it's a complete square wave. Just perfect.
Just complete
everything on 10 is square wave.
Peak.
Nope, no nothing. Square wave. And which, I mean, most do that. It just on the bass side, if the treble's on 10, sometimes it will depending on how the values of the potentiometers are, and how they varied over time. Some will have a big kind of like squirrely looking, like you dip the mids.
Yep.
Or some won't. Or some lesser degree, And his didn't do that crashing tone that I call it. Often if you just turn the treble back to 8, it fixes that completely. But I always was like, well, why on 10 does it, And I figured it out. And you change the 25K to a 50K mid pot, and that crashing goes away.
What does it do to the tone, though?
Well, that makes sense because it's the same sound as if you turn the mid down. So now you have more mid, and so it's not ever doing that. You know what I mean? Like on 10, it's not ever doing that.
Yeah. And it definitely doesn't throw away as much signal as the.
You get a little more gain actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
More gain out of it. but you know, that was all the stuff. And then so when I redid that amp for him, the thing he said was, that's the best it sounded since, I don't know what year he said, but like since blah blah blah. So at that point, I was like, well, okay, my career's over now, so I'm done. That's it.
What do you do now?
Right. You can't top that.
You can't top this ever.
Yeah.
No,
no. Absolutely. Stormlight Architect, thanks for the super chat. Great show once again, fellas. Dave, thank you, by the way. Dave, will the Gel 50 premiere at Gearfest? And will it be the same layout as a Run 50? Party on, my dudes.
No, it won't be a Run 50. It'll be the same layout as a
100
of the 20.
Oh, the 20.
It'll be so a small box /20, the 20 watt. So it'll be the Plexi channel and the high gain channel and the 800 channel, and it won't have the SAT on it because I went kind of true to form to the 100 watt amp. And it could possibly be there.
Nice. Pete Thorne, what's going on, my dude?
Hey, Pete.
Pete, did you actually come through this shop here a minute ago? I thought I heard you. I don't know.
He might be in his room.
He was trying to get that bottle of, what was it, tequila?
Yeah.
Trying to take his tequila back. You can't have it. It's mine.
You know, tomorrow night
I gave it to him though, so if I drink it all, I just have to replace it.
Not a problem.
I don't think I'm going to drink it all though. That would be bad.
It's all right. You guys exchange it here and there.
This is not the Jakey Lee show.
No, absolutely not. I couldn't.
I don't know if you ever saw that one.
Yeah, you ever see that one?
I saw some of it. Yes.
We went down a path on that one.
There was a lot of
it only got worse after.
Yeah, well,
if only there was a camera there.
I know. I wish I had a camera of me at dinner at the steak restaurant trying to order.
Oh, it was just like sloppy.
Well, I mean, we went to the steak restaurant called Cleaver in Vegas, and Jake said, "Oh, it's open for sure. You know, like let's go. You know." And like, okay, fine. My friend that was in the background of that video that had come to visit me, that I only see once in a while, and when I'm in Vegas, he wasn't drinking at all, so he could drive.
Right.
Here's the keys. So he drove us over there, and so the mistake that happened there was it's kind of, we were out of it already, and Jake's like, he'd been there, he's ordering drinks, and the waiter's like, what do you want to drink? And I'm like, well, whatever he's having. I pointed at Jake. So that was an absinthe cocktail.
Oh, Jesus.
And there might have been 2. There could have been 3. I'm not sure at that point.
No. After 1, maybe it doesn't even matter.
That took, I think that whole experience took several years off my life.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well,
but you know,
it was worth it.
It's our most watched show, so it was worth it, I guess. We need more like that.
You gotta sacrifice a little something, right, to get somewhere.
Get the views.
Get the views. Absolutely.
What do you think of this comment? Mark, every vintage tube amp turns into a fuzz pedal when it's turned to 10. Ed's didn't. It's because the signal was not causing the wave to clip that hard.
What? Every vintage tube amp doesn't turn into a fuzz pedal when turned to 10. Every vintage tube amp that has too much low end in the front end turns into a fuzz pedal when you turn it to 10. How's that?
Yes, I would agree.
You agree?
Yes.
Yeah, I think if you consider fuzz like farty garbage, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
exactly.
I mean,
so,
some more, yeah.
But most
Super
Plexis
basses.
are not going to turn into a fuzz pedal.
well, I mean, JTM 45.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
if you dime it the same way, if you have to turn the bass
66,
off in a JTM
6700
45.
waters,
Exactly.
those things can get pretty obnoxious.
Super basses, a little obnoxious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
You know?
JTM,
I mean, like, yeah.
that JTM that I have, I turn the bass down pretty low on it.
Off.
When I crank.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to crank it. Yeah,
All the way down.
Yeah, all the way down to nothing. And
really?
then occasionally that's still too much. No, I mean, but if you play an amp like that and you don't dime it all the way and you are using a Strat or a Telly and you're a different style player, that can sound great. It's not my favorite kind of thing, but it can be amazing sounding. But you don't want
with
to
the right
crank
guitar, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a difference too between like if you're getting like an original super lead, right? Before they split into super bass and super leads.
Mm-hmm.
Those original ones, when you got the bass on totally down, it's a different sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's still kind of tight, but it's a different sound than the super leads had too.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, I think, something that's very useful. Those like aluminum chassis 100 watters, like Malcolm or Embassy.
I always find that the front end, like when the gain is cascading, into another stage, if there's too much low end, that's when it starts. That's when the buildup starts. Like you
got to strip and stack.
Like you look at a Vox top boost AC30 on the bright channel. It's out of the first stage, so it's got a big cathode It's got a big cathode cap, 22 mic, and a 1.5K resistor, so it's nice and fat. But then they shrink it down to 500 picofarad on the output of it,
and the coupling,
which just lops off all the bass whatsoever. Lops it all
so
off.
Goofy.
And then it goes into it goes into the EQ circuit and everything else, and that's tight. That's pretty tight sounding. That's because you lopped all the low end off in the front end. When you start cascading low end into low end into low end, it starts to get like a fuzz pedal, muddy and mucky.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, before you wrap up, one of the questions I had for you, Ozzy, was
sure.
So you worked with Brad Whitford, right? And was he part of Three Monkeys amps?
Yes,
he was. Okay, and because I remember when the Three Monkeys amps came out, they were cool. They were very.
They were awesome.
Yeah, it was.
The thing I loved about those amps, Ozzy, I gotta compliment you. The look of those amps.
Oh, they were so cool.
Yeah,
fucking impeccable.
Yeah,
so we used to sell them. So I was involved in
Tone Merchants.
Yeah, with Tone Merchants, right?
Yeah.
So we sold a good amount of them, or a reasonable amount of them, or something, and they were cool amps, man. And
dude, we'll probably do it again, but it's just got to be the right time,
What was the one EL84 one? It was the
that's the Grease Monkey.
The Grease Monkey, yeah, that one was awesome. But the thing I loved about it is the look. The look.
Yeah, that kind of
the trapezoid, but details like
the white sparkle.
Like
I saw a white sparkle.
The piping wasn't the piping like wire.
It was like braided, shielded cable.
Yeah, cable. Right. So things like
what
that.
It was.
That was really had a certain aesthetic, like this vintage cool.
That was
50s,
the thing.
60s aesthetic that was super cool, and that's what was great.
Yeah, it was like Brad, myself, and Greg. We're at like Brad's house, and we're just like spitballing. Like, what do we want these things to look like? Like, what do we? We're coming up with like aesthetics of like things that had nothing to do with amplifiers, like cars, fashion, all these different things. Eras in time, and where we wanted. We even created a backstory of an entire band and a company that existed in the 50s that was making these amplifiers that we were now the end result of, right? So we made a whole backstory and history of this company and all the models that it did, and that these would be like the reissues of the things that they made back in the day.
Yeah,
so
cool.
it was so much fun.
That's awesome.
It was
the
really
aesthetics were particularly good.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm seeing lots of people say they sounded awesome. I never played through one, but Days Under Grass, Three Monkeys.
Orangutan was cool too.
Yeah, that was a weird design.
The Grease Monkey I really particularly liked.
It was something that, you know, was close to like what would happen if like Ken Fisher and Alexander Dumble had a baby.
Yeah.
So I was, but maybe more Ken Fisher.
Now, did Brad Whitford use the amps on them?
Yeah.
For a lot of years.
They used them for a lot. He still uses them. But now he's using, you know, IRs and using Fractal. Yeah.
Oh,
and in my mind, I'll be honest, if you're a touring musician and you're not doing something like that, you're making your life a lot harder, and your roadies.
Yeah, but man, it doesn't sound the same.
It doesn't. I agree with you.
It doesn't come across.
Most of the drunken guys in the audience don't notice.
No cabinets on stage doesn't sound the same. It doesn't.
That's for us, right? But they're playing for like, you know, a bunch of
it doesn't sound the same. I went to see Bryan Adams. They were great, but I'm sorry, didn't sound as good.
Yeah.
You know what I think? I think that that analog has to be in the system somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. I think you can go with IR pedals. I think you could get away with doing that to avoid the miking problems. But there is something in analog that will never be able to be reproduced by an algorithm. I think it's way too complicated. I think there's too many variables with the user, their touch, their sense, how they're going to use it, and you can abuse analog in ways that the algorithms don't account for. Right? Like if you figure out, well, they probably do this for like 1176s, but like the way that two transformers, if you gang them together, kind of interact with each other, right? So if you put one into another, how those transformers interact, did they take that to account in the analog, in the the algorithm, if you're going to stack them in Pro Tools? I don't know. So there's things you can do with analog that I don't think you could figure out a way to put it into all of it into an algorithm. So I'm still with you with the analog.
Let's talk about real quick about your little load box you built. The load box you have,
like,
the little
like
thing.
the Jose type load box. Yeah, not much to him.
So
just like
So I have to say I've done lots of experimenting, and I have an original Jose transformer coupled line out box. And to be honest, that transformer is not what's changing the world. It's really not. And in fact, there's actually better ways of doing it that actually sound better. But it's not really doing much, at least because I have an original one. I have the actual Jose.
Now, what kind of transformer was he using?
It was a triad transformer. It's made by Triad. It like used to exist. It used a little tiny one. Used to exist. Doesn't exist anymore. Can't get it anymore. It's like it's a little cryptic on what it was. But it was a triad transformer, and it was like but it wasn't doing any ground isolation, or it wasn't doing anything like that, because everything was grounded to the box, and it was just coming in, going through the transformer, and then going through a resistor and a pot, and then out.
Didn't take advantage of what was really possible with the load box in terms of like phase switching or ground.
None of that. It wasn't doing any of that. It was just dropping some level, and yeah. And I've experimented ad nauseum with the original one, and then other line out circuits I use, and and everyone's always like, yeah, yours sounds a little bit better than that one. So I just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think like going back to what we were talking about before, in sound, there's really no right answer, right?
No.
It's sort of like what the end user is going to do with it.
Yeah.
So when something is not necessarily working right, I think that can also create an opportunity for something to be done that's unique, right? So that sound that Eddie had, that I heard on that overhead mic, it's, it could be possibly due to, I mean, you could, let's say, oversaturate the coil in a tiny little transformer, right? And just beat the piss out of some transformer.
You could potentially do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And get interesting sounds that way. So a tiny little, like I experimented with, it was like the SP77 or SP76 triads.
Yeah.
The little red encapsulated ones. Yeah. I mean, you can beat the ever living snot out of those things and they'll start to really sound nasty.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So in terms of like better or worse
or different or who knows?
Yeah, it's just different to me.
Yeah.
So, but if the end user likes it, you've done your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
Good point.
That's true. Before we go, I got to run in a couple minutes.
Sure.
I want to talk. First of all, Ozzy, it's great to have you on the show, man. Thank you.
Hey,
so much.
I had a blast. I really enjoyed this.
We'll have to do a part 2.
Dave,
But I wanted to. You also have a business, Three Monkeys Solderless, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that real quick before we run and how people can.
All right. I'll just quickly. I always got the stuff on the floor because I start the videos off by going like this.
Yeah, three monkeys.
Three Monkeys Solderless. Buy this stuff. Yeah. So you check us out at threemonkeysolderless.com. Easiest stuff on the planet to make. So
what makes it different?
All right. What makes it different is how you put it together. So it's the idea for this came from amp manufacturing, is that I couldn't find people that knew how to strip wire, right? So they would always go and crimp the wire, cut it a little bit, and it would fail. So when you notice cables, when they fail on the road, like when Greg's out on the road and his cables would fail, they always fail right at where the, where the
strip. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's where they break because they've been improperly stripped. So this, you don't strip the wire. You just cut the cable clean. You put the end on and you screw it on, right? And there it is. It's done, right? And then because they're on opposite sides, tightening goes in different directions. Torsional stiffness keeps them from unwinding. So in order for one side to loosen, the other side has to tighten. If they're both tight, it can't happen anymore. And you can like hang from them. So it just became an easy way for people to make cables that were reliable. And if you didn't know how to solder, you didn't have to worry about it. If you didn't know how to wire strip, you didn't have to worry about it. And like, we built Brad's pedal boards with these things and they went on airplanes, buses, everywhere, and no failures. So yeah, that's what pretty much makes them unique. And then I think we're the only company in the world that has a solderless DC connector. So if you need that, we got that too.
That's cool. And how do people go to reach you? And
it's www.threemonkeysolderless.com.
Awesome.
And they can get whatever they need there.
George Bahone. What's up, George?
Hey, George from Serbia. And George has Three Monkeys amps.
Yes, I know George.
Yes.
I know the name very well.
Yes.
Yeah, George is a great guy.
Good to hear from you, George.
Yeah. Thanks for watching the show, George. It's got to be late in Serbia, I would imagine. Or maybe the morning.
I don't know.
Maybe the morning.
No idea.
Yeah.
What time is it in Serbia? Let's find out.
7 hours?
I'm going to look it up just out of curiosity.
I think it's 7.
Oh, that's 4:34 a.m. Yeah, that's either early or really late, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, it's early in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, hope you're having a great time, George.
I hope you're laying in bed and not up still.
Yeah. Safe travels.
Yeah.
Very cool, George. Thanks for stopping in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ossie, thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
We just finished a show at 4:30 in the morning. Holy cow.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, there he is. Just finished the show. Wow. That's a big show. Is he with
Black Eyed Peas?
Black Eyed Peas? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Man, they get some huge crowds.
Especially
George is still doing Chiron Knife. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Clicked on their own. He's still doing Chiron Knife, right?
Yeah.
But he's touring right now with the Black Eyed Peas. So, okay. So, we don't have another show lined up, so we're probably going to do a Punish Dave with questions probably next couple weeks.
Yep.
And then we're going to have some other people lined up. And so just please stay tuned to our social media, Facebook stuff, and please hit subscribe. Oh shit! And I totally forgot
our sponsors.
To our sponsors. So at the very end of the show, guys, before you go, make sure you press subscribe and click the bell. Check out Sweetwater, please, in the link we provide below. That's the affiliate link that we have below in the description of our videos. You just click on that. It takes you right to Sweetwater page. They track it, and we get credit for anything you buy. It's super cool. And then also, please check out Fixed Pedal Board, fixedpedalboards.com. All right.
Yes.
You can get all your upgrades to your pedal boards over there, lifts and drawers,
bridges, the patch boxes, and they even make our chassis. They don't sell those though.
No. But yeah, tell Tim we say hi. And sorry, I waited to the very last minute to do that. But anyway, Ozzy, hang on while we say goodbye. And
Sure.
Everybody have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Take care.
Bye.